It is a dark and mysterious evening. The royal palace is shrouded in shadows and the flickering lights of flaming torches. Now is the time to commit the most heinous crimes when human vices are hidden by the darkness of night. The main character is imprisoned in a dungeon located under the royal palace. The unfortunate girl is being talked to by her brother. She ended up behind bars because of her relative, but that is not enough for him. The prisoner's brother came to her with a terrible request. A cruel aristocrat shamelessly asked his unfortunate sister to die instead of a girl named Gabrielle. This person is much more dear to him than the main character, who is very hurt by what her brother says to her. The young man who speaks to the main character is called Ricardo Inoaden. People around him have given him the nickname Dear Mr. Rose. He is the brother of the girl who is behind bars. The main character, whose name is Hillis Inoaden, looked at her cruel relative. Not a single muscle moved on the face of the treacherous aristocrat. He intends to repeat his terrible request again. The poor girl tries to understand how her own brother can treat her so badly. She can't even imagine why Ricardo Inoaden treats her so cruelly and wants her dead. Hillis Inoaden said that she was already in prison instead of the girl Gabrielle, who is their younger sister. The main character did not want to die instead of anyone, but the cruel aristocrat replied that Gabrielle would not have been able to stand life in a prison cell. That is why the girl is here instead of her. The main character was very upset and asked her brother why he did not care about her fate, but only showed attention to his younger sister Gabrielle. Does Ricardo Inoadenu really not feel sorry for the main character, whose hands are shackled in heavy chains and whose soul is torn to shreds from such a cruel and insidious betrayal of her once beloved relatives? Hillis Inoaden asked her brother if he wasn't worried that she might die. After all, he would lose his sister too. The girl couldn't understand why the young aristocrat was being so unfair to her. The main character's older brother replied that she herself told him about her divine gift, which gives her the ability to die many times and return to the past after each death. Hillis Inoaden replied that her brother had never believed her words about this divine gift before, and had always called these stories complete fiction. But now, for some reason, he remembered it. It was very cruel and unfair. Ricardo Inoaden replied that Gabrielle was now in mortal danger, and she could not return to the past after death, unlike the main character. Therefore, the girl would have to die instead of their younger sister. There was nothing to be done. This was her fate. The main character doesn't know what to answer to her cruel brother. She looks at him carefully and still can't believe that the person who was once close to her wants her dead. Hillis Inoaden bowed her head in despair and bitter tears ran down her cheeks. The girl did not expect such an outcome of her life. She must not just die, but perish at the will of her own brother. The unfortunate prisoner cannot understand why Ricardo Inoaden is so merciless towards her and does not show her any kind feelings. The insults and insults inflicted by relatives are felt 100 times more painfully. The main character continues to cry and talk to her brother. She said that he never believed her stories about returning to the past after death. Therefore, he cannot be sure that his sister was telling him the truth. But Ricardo Inoaden still asks her to die. A young aristocrat stands near the bars of the prison cell where the main character is imprisoned. He stares at his sister and is not going to back down in his intentions, despite her pleas and complaints. But Hillis Inoaden continues to reproach her brother for cruelty and injustice. She always covered for her relative and did various important things for him while he indulged in entertainment. The main character added that for the sake of her beloved family, she took upon herself the crime that was actually committed by her younger sister Gabrielle. She took this desperate step without further thought, but no one appreciated it. Hillis Inoaden walked up to the bars of her prison cell and gripped the iron bars tightly, showing her anger and despair. The main character told her brother that she was also his younger sister, like Gabriel, but he did not show her even the slightest sign of love. It was unfair, but Ricardo Inoaden remained adamant. He looked at his sister and said that she must stop thinking only about herself. Now it was necessary to take care of Gabrielle, who was in mortal danger. After these words, the young aristocrat dropped to one knee in front of the main character. He decided to change his tactics and achieve his goal in another way. If threats do not help, then prayers will help. Ricardo Inoaden humbly bowed his head and said that he would now beg his sister on his knees to accept a voluntary death in place of Gabrielle, who must remain alive. This is the only request Ricardo Inoaden makes. He will never ask the main character for anything else. But this time, the stakes are too high. Hillis Inoaden will be able to resurrect in the past, and death will be just an unpleasant memory for her. And for Gabrielle, everything can end very sadly. The main character's brother was silent for a while and said that death for her would be just an unpleasant moment that would soon be forgotten, and she would continue her existence, but in her past. The girl will have to endure the pain for only 1 second, and her suffering will end. Hillis Inoaden looks at her brother with surprise and incomprehension. She does not want to die, despite his persuasion. Ricardo Inoaden jumped up from his knees and quickly approached the bars of the prison cell. He grabbed his sister's hand and told her that she must sacrifice herself for their little sister, Gabrielle. The young aristocrat is in incredible nervous tension. He said that the main character, according to her, has already died 7 times. Couldn't she do it again for the sake of her close relative? Hillis Inoaden listened attentively to her brother. She thought that he had simply gone mad and was delirious. The girl smiled mysteriously and thought about what to answer Ricardo Inoaden. The main character was lost in her thoughts and felt infinitely lonely. After all, in fact, it is she who is a blood relative of Ricardo Inoadenu, and not Gabrielle, whom he loves so much and protects from pain and death. At that moment, Hillis Inoaden lost all hope. She realized that her brother did not love her. The girl decided to turn to her tormentor and settle the matter once and for all. Ricardo Inoaden listens attentively to his sister and does not believe his ears. The main character smiled and said that from now on she would never call Ricardo her older brother. She had already made 7 difficult attempts to fix the situation, but all ended in complete failure. Hillis Inoaden's brother cannot be fixed because he is a terrible person. Now, it was the main character's turn to give justice to all her offenders. Suddenly, Hillis Inoaden's mind became clouded and she was transported back to her past. She always returns to this important moment, which has great significance for her. The main character and her relatives are now in the park on a picnic. They are walking in the fresh air near their estate. Suddenly, something strange and scary happened. The demonic creature that Gabrielle asked to buy to play with has broken loose. This evil demon with huge fangs has decided to attack the Inoaden family, who are currently relaxing in nature. Ricardo Inoaden left the main character alone with the terrible demon and immediately rushed to save Gabrielle. This was so offensive to Hillis Inoaden that she even laughed out of disappointment. The main character's brother, Gabriel, and the servants are horrified and stupefied by everything that is happening now. It seems to them that an evil demon with a huge mouth is about to devour Hillis Inoaden. But it was not meant to be. Something else happened that left young Ricardo Inoaden in shock. He looks at what is happening and cannot believe his eyes. The huge demonic dog couldn't reach the main character because she used her ancestral magical power, which only she has. Hillis's brother Inoaden envies the girl because he himself hoped to get this gift. But he didn't succeed. The power of Blossom was at the disposal of the main character, and today it manifested itself for the first time. Hillis Inoaden already knows about her magical abilities. She does not share her older brother's excitement and looks at him indifferently, disappointed that he again ran to save Gabrielle, and not her, from the fangs of a demonic predator. The main character looks closely at Ricardo Inoaden and Gabrielle. They are in a state of shock and do not know what to do now. Brother Hillis Inoaden hugs his beloved sister and begins to justify himself. He wants to say that the main character misunderstood his actions when he left her alone with a terrible monster. Gabrielle is in the arms of Ricardo Inoaden. She said that she was very scared. Her brother tries to calm her down, but the main character told her that she is the real culprit of this terrible incident with the predatory demon. It was this capricious girl who asked to buy her this demonic creature for fun, but now it all ended very sadly. It's good that no one was hurt. The older brother said that Hillis Inoaden was being too cruel to poor Gabrielle, who was very frightened. But the girl said that she had had enough and did not want to talk about it anymore. The main character went to the estate to recover from this terrible incident at the picnic and to rest a little. Ricardo Inoaden noticed that the roses themselves were spreading on the ground in the place where his younger sister passed. This is a manifestation of her magical power. Passing by her older brother, the main character gave him a contemptuous look and told him not to cross her path again. The girl was offended by him for abandoning her in a difficult moment. Since ancient times, there have been 4 ancient aristocratic families in the kingdom, in which special noble blood flows. Representatives of these families have magical abilities. The forces of spring have been embodied in the Inoaden family. For a very long time, representatives of this ancient and noble family have commanded this power. The Kalicia family managed to control the magical powers of summer. This powerful knowledge has come in handy for this glorious family more than once in the most unpredictable situations. The Berger family has the ability to control the elements of autumn, making it one of the strongest families in the kingdom. The magical power of winter was only subject to the representatives of the Farvanon family. These noble aristocrats were able to use their abilities for the benefit of their family. The sacred power of the seasons has been passed down from generation to generation in aristocratic families since ancient times. But gradually, this magical power began to be exhausted because the blood of the aristocrats became weaker. The power of spring is still passed down through the Inoaden family, but now only one member of the family can possess magical powers. Everyone believed that the successor of this power would be Ricardo Inoaden, who has quite thick blood. But it turned out that this is not so. Today's incident at the picnic revealed that the sacred power of spring has been inherited by Hillis Inoaden. Now the main character realizes that she has incredible powers that her older brother will never receive as long as she is alive. Evening has come. The Inoaden estate is back to its usual routine after the terrible incident at the picnic. The inhabitants of the palace are getting ready for bed, but not everyone is able to sleep peacefully yet. Gabrielle Inoaden's chambers are not calm. The girl is very scared of the demonic predator that wanted to attack her this afternoon. She cries and blames her older brother for not being caring and attentive enough to her today. Ricardo Inoaden doesn't pay attention to his younger sister's hurtful words towards him. He tries to calm Gabrielle down and wants her to take a medicine that will definitely help her relax. The spoiled and nervous girl does not listen to her older brother and continues to be capricious. She said that Ricardo Inoaden paid more attention to Hillis today and did not care about Gabrielle at all. This surprised the young aristocrat. Everything was not at all as the capricious girl says. The older brother tries to convince her, but nothing works. This upset Ricardo Inoadena very much. Entered the girl's room. He is the father of Ricardo, Hillis, and Gabrielle. He has an important matter for his children. Diego Inoaden is very worried about his youngest daughter after the accident that happened in the park today. He wants to check on Gabrielle. The capricious girl stopped crying when she saw her father. She was very happy and rushed towards Diego Inoaden to hug him. The aristocrat liked it very much. Now he feels calmer. The owner of the estate, Inoaden, hugged his youngest daughter tightly and smiled. He said that he had already been informed of everything. Diego was very glad that no one had suffered from the terrible claws and fangs of the demonic monster. Ricardo Inoaden fully supports his father and agrees with him in everything. He thought for a moment and said that he had to tell his breadwinner important news that he did not know yet. The young man is a little embarrassed. He is silent and does not know where to begin his story about today's incident. But he needs to tell his father important news that cannot be delayed. Finally, Ricardo Inoaden made up his mind and said that today, for the first time, Hillis had manifested the sacred power of spring. Diego did not believe his son. He thought that he had mixed something up, because Ricardo should have manifested magical abilities because of his thick blood. The young aristocrat answered his father that there could be no mistake. Today, Hillis Inoaden showed her sacred power of spring. This greatly upset the father of the family. He does not want to believe it because he had great hopes and plans for his son, not his daughter. Diego Inoaden thought about it and said that only one family member could have magical powers during each generation. Now all plans were messed up because Ricardo had not received the magical power. The father calmed his son down and said that tomorrow he would try to figure everything out by talking to the main character. The next morning dawned. Hillis Inoaden went into the dining room and noticed that the servants had set breakfast for only 3 people. However, this happens almost always. The main character is not particularly welcome in this house. The maids noticed the main character and asked her why she had gone out to the dining room this morning. Usually the girl never does this and has breakfast in her room. But Hillis Inoaden replied that she has the right to do whatever she wants in her home, even if she is not welcome there. Deep down, the main character is very upset by the fact that breakfast is set for 3. Of course, it is intended for Diego, Ricardo, and Gabrielle. Hillis is not on the list of expected guests, and this is very unpleasant. But the main character is not going to despair or fall into depression because of this. She has already gotten used to the bad attitude of her relatives. All this is quite expected and predictable for the girl. Today, the main character will act differently than usual. Hillis Inoaden sat down at the table in the place of the head of the family. She decided to eat a delicious cutlet that the servants prepared for the owner of the estate. The servants took notice and said that the main character should not violate the accepted order. They promised to bring breakfast to Hillis Inoaden's room, but the girl replied that she would have breakfast here and now. No one would dare to disturb her. The main character continued to eat calmly, saying that breakfast today was very tasty. The servants do not know what to do now. They are simply speechless from such unusual behavior of the girl. Hillis Inoaden eats a juicy cutlet and thinks about how she hasn't had a chance to eat properly for a long time. The girl remembered her diet when she was imprisoned during her previous incarnation. She had nothing but water and a stale piece of bread. Now she could eat a luxurious steak. This time, everything will be different. The main character will no longer sacrifice herself and will not let herself be offended. Now she will only care about herself and her interests. Hillis Inoaden finished her breakfast and turned to her servants. She said that she would no longer allow herself to be humiliated by inferior food. The maids pretended not to understand what the main character was talking about, but the girl said that she had always been fed only scraps from the table of the master of the estate. Now she would not allow this. The main character got up from the table and headed towards the exit of the dining room. Finally, she said that from this day on, the maids should cook for her the same food that the girl had tasted today for breakfast. Hillis Inoaden was about to leave the dining room when she suddenly froze in surprise. She saw her father walking down the hallway, accompanied by Ricardo Inoaden. The aristocrats were discussing Gabrielle's condition. The main character heard that her relatives wanted to make her favorite cake for her capricious sister, so that she would calm down after the incident with the demonic predator. Suddenly, Diego and Ricardo Inoadena noticed that Hillis was next to them and heard their conversation. They fell silent. The girl noticed that her relatives felt awkward in her presence. They lingered in Gabrielle's room, so they were late for breakfast. It seemed that the capricious girl was again simulating poor health, continuing her manipulations. The main character decided not to pay any attention to her father and brother. She simply walked past them in silence. Diego Inoaden noticed this. The owner of the estate was offended by his daughter's behavior. He called out to her. Hillis Inoaden turned around and looked at her father with indifference. The girl asked Diego with disdain why he was trying to stop her and what he wanted from her at the moment. The words of the main character shocked her relatives. They simply could not believe their eyes and ears. The unusually bold behavior of the always humble and obedient girl greatly surprised Ricardo and Diego Inoadena. But Hillis Inoaden smiled and calmly said that her father should explain to her the reason why he tried to stop her. It was the usual court etiquette. Diego Inoaden said that his daughter did not dare to speak to him so impudently. But the main character replied that he should watch his words from now on and always address her on the matter. The owner of the estate was very angry with his daughter for her impudent answers. Ricardo Inoaden tries to calm his father down. He said that Hillis had not yet recovered from her encounter with the demonic beast. The main character's relatives headed to the dining room and were about to have breakfast. But they noticed that the maids were already clearing the table of the scraps left by Hillis Inoaden. The head of the family is even more angry with his daughter. He is beside himself with anger that has taken over his entire being. Diego Inoaden did not expect that Hillis would dare to eat from his plate. At this time, the main character is resting quietly in her room. The girl feels that she overate a little during today's breakfast, but this does not bother her much. Now Hillis Inoaden is full and pleased with herself. This is the main thing. Suddenly, the door to the main character's room quickly swung open and her personal maid named May walked in. This maid had always been known for her poor upbringing and impudent behavior. The maid came to wake up her charge, but she was very surprised because the girl was no longer sleeping and was sitting quietly on her bed. Maid May pulled back the curtains to let in more sunlight. She said that the main character is a real lazybones, so she doesn't want to sleep for long. Hillis Inoaden doesn't like that the pathetic maid constantly devalues her personality with her rude remarks. During all 7 incarnations, this rude and uncouth creature humiliated the main character, forgetting who was the mistress of the situation here. But this time, everything will be different. Hillis Inoaden realized that she could now use her personal maid to her advantage. The girl called out to the maid imperiously and told her that she needed to stop chattering and get down to business immediately, bringing fresh water for her mistress to wash herself. This surprised the maid very much. She had not expected such a turn of events. Maid May was a little confused at first, but after a moment she pulled herself together and asked the main character if she was talking to her now. Hillis Inoaden sighed heavily and asked her maid if she saw anyone else in the room besides her. The girl was tired of arguing with her rude maid and began to get angry with her. Maid May realized that it was better not to anger her mistress now and went to carry out her order. The main character relaxed and yawned demonstratively, showing that she no longer paid any attention to the maid. A few minutes later, May's governess returned with a basin full of water for her mistress to wash. She placed the vessel with water on the floor, but she did it rather impudently and carelessly. The main character really doesn't like the behavior of her maid, who constantly grumbles and expresses her dissatisfaction. But Hillis Inoaden remains completely calm and looks attentively at her subordinate. The young aristocrat decided to teach her impolite maid a lesson immediately. She put her foot in a basin of water and hit it sharply so that it splashed and wet the maid. Governess May is in a state of shock. She is standing all wet from head to toe and cannot understand what is happening now. The maid did not expect such imperious behavior from the once modest and obedient girl. But this will serve her as a good lesson in the future. Previously, the maid woke the main character up in the morning. She mocked the unhappy and oppressed girl, receiving great moral satisfaction from this. Hillis Inoaden never argued with the impudent governess and humbly accepted all her antics. The pitiful servant's pride, inflated to unimaginable proportions, became even greater when she daily mocked the meek girl from high society. But now everything will be different. The main character will no longer suffer insults from her rude and uncouth maid, who has forgotten who is the real mistress of the situation here. Hillis Inoaden raised her voice and asked her governess in a commanding tone why she couldn't do even the simplest task properly. Was the maid really going to have to be taught everything all over again? The girl looked sternly at the maid and said that if she brought her cold water to wash herself again, she would beat her with rods and drive her out of the yard. And no one in the entire kingdom would stand up for the humiliated servant, so that she would know her true place. The main character's anger has now found someone to vent it on. The girl said that no aristocratic house would want to hire a governess with such a bad track record. Maid May is horrified and does not know what to say in this situation. Hillis Inoaden regained control of her emotions. She said that the maid needed to reflect on her behavior. Otherwise, she would face a very severe punishment. The main character thought for a moment and ordered the frightened governess to bring warm water for washing. Otherwise, she would chop off the maid's hands for poor performance of her duties. Maid May was not as stupid as she seemed at first glance. She realized that she urgently needed to apologize to her mistress for her bad behavior in the past. The maid humbly bowed her head before the young aristocrat and asked her forgiveness for all her previous misdeeds. She would immediately bring warm water for washing and would be more efficient in the future. A few minutes later, a basin of warm water was already standing next to the main character's bed. The maid completed her task very quickly and did everything perfectly. This time, the governess is the epitome of humility. She stands meekly by her mistress's bed and awaits new orders. The main character has determined for herself that the maid has accepted the changes that have occurred in her mistress. Hillis Inoaden washed her face with warm water for the first time in a long time and felt real pleasure from this process. Previously, the maid brought her only cold and hard water, which made the girl's delicate skin rough. The main character wipes her face with a soft towel and thinks about her wardrobe, which she also really doesn't like. The wardrobe contains only plain and dull dresses. This needs to be corrected immediately. Hillis Inoaden headed to her dressing room to sort through the dresses that would be more appropriate for a nun than a young and beautiful aristocrat. For as long as the main character can remember, all the best and most elegant dresses have always gone to her younger sister Gabrielle. Now it's time to correct this injustice. The main character examines her dull and boring clothes and realizes that she has been missing out on too much in life. These rags are simply unwearable. They need to be thrown in the trash. Governess May watches her mistress's actions closely and cannot understand what she is going to do now. But suddenly, the main character decided to sort out her old wardrobe with one movement of her hand, using the magic of spring. Hillis Inoaden turned all her old dresses into a large pile of rose petals, which now fill the young aristocrat's wardrobe and exude a pleasant fragrance. The main character took a handful of rose petals and demonstratively scattered them around herself. After that, the young aristocrat ordered her maid to clean up the room and take all the petals away. The frightened and surprised maid now realized that her mistress had magical powers and began to respect her even more than before. Governess May immediately began to collect rose petals. Suddenly, the door of the young aristocrat's chambers swung open and a valet appeared on the threshold of the room. The servant turned to the main character and said that the owner of the Innoaden estate wanted to see her immediately. The girl realized that now she would have a serious conversation with her father. The main character noticed that the valet did not knock before entering her chambers. This would also need to be dealt with all possible severity. But right now, the girl does not really want to talk to her father. Hillis Innoaden told her valet that Diego Innoaden must come to her chambers himself if he wanted to speak to her. The governess, May, who was busy arranging rose petals, felt a chill run down her spine at such an unheard of audacity. The young aristocrat calmly repeated her words. She said that the owner of the estate should come to his daughter himself if he wanted to talk to her. This left all the servants present in complete stupor. They could not believe their ears and did not know what to say. Hillis Innoaden said that the valet and his attendants could now leave the young lady's chambers and convey her words to Diego Innoaden. Maid May decided to convince her mistress not to anger her father with her proud and unapproachable behavior. But the main character told her servant to behave more modestly and quietly. Otherwise, she would be punished. Suddenly, the young aristocrat's father burst into her chambers, accompanied by Ricardo Innoaden, who tries in vain to calm the owner of the estate. The main character's father is very angry with her, but Hillis Innoaden is unperturbed. She looks calmly and intently at her furious father and remains meaningfully silent. A few moments later, a mysterious smile appeared on the face of the young aristocrat, which did not bode well for anyone present here. Diego Innoaden noticed that his daughter was making fun of him. This made him even more angry than before. Ricardo Innoaden tries unsuccessfully to calm down the furious father, but it is all useless. The main character's older brother also starts getting angry at her. He started yelling at his sister and told her to apologize to her father immediately for eating his breakfast this morning. Hillis Innoaden looked at Ricardo and replied that she couldn't eat in front of her father, so she came to the dining room early and ate his breakfast. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to swallow a bite. Diego and Ricardo Innoaden can't believe their ears. They never thought that Hillis Innoaden would behave so boldly and independently, showing the strength of his character. The head of the family said that until now he had pitied his daughter and had not taken the necessary measures to punish her for her disrespect towards him. But now he would act differently. At this time, Ricardo noticed that long and thorny stems of plants began to wriggle quietly near him and his father. All this frightened the young man very much. Hillis Innoaden looks at her relatives, whom she now hates, with indifference. The girl understands that these two people simply never loved or respected her. The main character approached her father, who told her that he had never taught her to behave so boldly. But the girl smiled and replied that Diego Innoaden had never taught her anything. She had learned everything herself, despite her grief and loneliness. And at that moment, Hillis Innoaden remembered her entire previous history, which forced the unfortunate girl to make a radical reassessment of values and learn to look at many things from a different angle. When Diego Innoaden was young, he met the love of his life and decided to choose a marriage for love, not convenience. But a few years after a happy family life, the main character's mother died when she gave birth to her. The girl's father will never forgive her for this. He considers her to be guilty of her mother's death. 5 years after the death of his wife, Diego Innoaden married a second time to a woman who bore a striking resemblance to the main character's deceased mother. This woman had a daughter from a previous marriage who also bore a strong resemblance to Hillis Innoaden. This girl's name is Gabrielle. When the stepmother and her own daughter arrived at the Innoaden estate, everyone immediately liked them. It seemed that nothing foreshadowed the coming trouble. Young Ricardo Innoaden sincerely believed that now everyone would only be happy in their new family life. But over time, it happened that Hillis Innoaden did not find a place in her father's new family. Now she is forced to be alone often and miss her loved ones. The main character often looked out the window, being in her room all alone. The young aristocrat watched with envy as her father played with his adopted daughter, completely forgetting about her existence. In addition, Hillis Innoaden noted that her father always allowed and forgave the various pranks that Gabrielle committed. The main character was never allowed to do that. Gabrielle never needed anything and was always happy because the main character's father cared about her well-being and good mood to the detriment of his eldest daughter. Hillis Inoaden could never have imagined that her father was capable of such tender feelings as he felt for his adopted daughter. He had never shown tenderness towards the main character before. If a girl tried to ask Diego Inoadina for something, he always pushed her away and left her alone with her problems. The owner of the estate, Inoaden, always treated his own daughter with disdain because he considered her to be the culprit of her mother's death during childbirth. Hillis Inoaden was always very upset about this and tried to get at least a little love and affection from her father. But the girl was always left with nothing. One day, Diego Inoaden scolded his daughter for simply touching him without permission. This left a deep wound in the girl's soul. It was at this moment that the main character realized that she had lost her father's love forever. Her place was now taken by her adopted daughter, Gabrielle. Now Diego Inoadina has an ideal family, in which Hillis no longer has a place. So long and difficult years passed. And now the main character is confronted by her father and brother, to whom she says that they did not take any part in her upbringing. Therefore, she has the right to do as she wishes. The thorny vines continue to curl unnoticed around the main character's relatives. The girl stepped on one of them to contain her subconscious anger, the time for which had not yet come. Hillis looked at her father blankly and said that he should have spent more time raising his eldest daughter. But it was too late to change anything now. Diego Inoaden said that the main character is acting so boldly because she thinks she is a powerful sorceress, but this is all some kind of misunderstanding. Yesterday, there was an incident in the park that does not say anything for sure. Hillis will not be able to inherit the holy power of spring. Maid May, who is in charge of cleaning up the rose petals, doesn't think so. She has seen enough today to know that her mistress has enormous magical powers. The main character listened attentively to her father. She lowered her eyes and thought sadly that Diego Inoaden was an ordinary fool who did not notice obvious facts. The owner of the estate tried to order his daughter to stop acting so brazen and rude, as if she was worth something in this life. But the girl said that she would do as she pleased. The main character abruptly turned away from her father and said that she would no longer follow his selfish orders, which only harmed her. Especially since Ricardo Inoaden could not obtain the sacred power of spring, despite his thick blood. Hillis Inoaden went to the large window of her room and said that now her father could do nothing to her. All his efforts to tame his impudent daughter would be in vain. The main character smiled and asked the owner of the estate if he wanted to kill her, so that she would no longer bother him with her behavior. The girl continues to smile and think about things that are only available to her. She realized that Diego and Ricardo Inoadena are simpletons who do not see beyond their noses. Hillis Inoaden stood on the windowsill and asked her father how he would react if she jumped down now. The main character really enjoys teasing her selfish relative. The girl's father and brother are watching her closely. They are shocked and do not know what to say. The main character suggested testing her magical abilities immediately. If she jumps from the ledge onto the street, she will remain alive if she has control over the sacred power of spring. Maid May is watching everything that is happening in her young mistress's room. The maid knows that her charge has magical powers, but she is also afraid that the girl will break herself when jumping out of the window. The main character looks closely at her father, who is silent and thinking hard about something. The girl wants to see Diego Inoaden's reaction to her possible death from falling from a great height. But Hillis Inoaden's father remains silent and does not prevent his daughter's possible death. Only her brother tries to stop her. But it's too late. The main character has done what she planned and jumped out of the window of her room. The father of the main girl froze in amazement and indecision. He does not believe that his daughter decided to do such a stupid and dangerous thing to prove she was right. A few moments later, Diego Inoaden came to his senses and ran to the open window to see what had happened to his eldest daughter. The head of the family looked down and saw that Hillis Inoaden was lying on the ground with her arms spread out. Rosebuds and petals were strewn all around the girl. It did not look like she had died from the fall. A few moments after landing, the main character came to her senses and opened her eyes. The girl began to realize that she was alive and unharmed. Suddenly, Hillis Inoaden heard a soft whisper from the flower next to her ear. This delicate rosebud was trying to comfort the girl and encourage her. The main character lies peacefully on the ground among rose petals and buds. She enjoys the warm sunlight and thinks about nothing. The girl looks up and sees the stunned faces of her relatives who are standing by the open window and cannot understand what is really happening here. They thought that the main character would inevitably die after falling from a great height. At that moment, Hillis Inoaden remembered her first incarnation. She had been very stupid then and had failed to properly accept her gift. The girl asked her father for forgiveness for the fact that the sacred power of spring had manifested in her and not in her brother. Diego Inoaden was very angry that the magical energy went to his daughter and not his beloved son, but he could do nothing about it. The unfortunate girl tried to justify herself to her cruel father, but he threw a vase of roses at her to make her shut up and irritate him with her worthless words. The head of the family rudely ordered the main character to shut up. Now he is trying to figure out a way to return the sacred power of spring and give it to Ricardo Inoaden. The girl's father thought for a moment and ordered her not to leave her room and to keep quiet about her abilities until he found a way out of the current situation. When leaving for her room, the main character met her brother in the hallway. But he did not support her in her difficult moment and pushed her away, burning with envy and hatred. From that moment on, Hillis Inoaden's life became simply unbearable. Her relatives hated her even more than before. No one wanted to communicate with the unfortunate girl. Diego Inoaden tried his best to return the sacred power of spring to his son, but he couldn't do it, no matter what he did. For the head of the Inoaden family, this was a big blow from which he was never able to fully recover. And once again, Hillis Inoaden was to blame for all the family's troubles. Diego had to lie to the aristocratic society that his son Ricardo had discovered magical abilities. But now the main character has to do all the magical work for her brother. This must be done secretly so that no one notices the trick, and everyone thinks that Ricardo is doing it. Sometimes there were cases when, for various reasons, Hillis Inoaden could not be near her brother, and those around him had doubts about his magical abilities. Diego cruelly punished his daughter for this. During this time, Ricardo Inoaden continued to pretend that he was the true heir of the sacred power of spring. But not everyone believed it. Even when the main character was ill, none of her relatives pitied her and continued to use her for their own purposes. For the father of the family, this unfortunate girl was only a resource that would raise his authority among the aristocrats and subjects. The cruel Diego Inoaden continued to abuse his daughter. In order to keep her completely obedient, he often starved her and did not even give her water to quench her thirst. Poor Hillis Inoaden was left alone and locked up, feeling guilty that she had let her family down again. One day, the main character decided to take a short walk along the corridor of the Inoaden estate and met her younger sister, Gabrielle. She was not happy with this meeting. The capricious girl looked at her sister with disdain and said that she should not leave her room because it makes people around her feel bad. The main character humbly listened to the reproach from Gabrielle and promised that she would no longer leave her room so as not to embarrass the people around her. The capricious girl was quite satisfied with this. Hillis Inoaden decided to meet her brother to discuss the situation. Maybe he would show leniency to his own sister. The unfortunate girl now needs useful advice. But Ricardo has not returned to the estate yet. She must wait for him. The main character stands in the hallway, waiting for her brother to return. She hears the maids whispering, expressing their displeasure at the girl's presence. Hillis Inoaden is in her home, but that means nothing now because she has no rights or power here anymore. The unfortunate girl decided to hide behind the stairs that lead to the second floor of the estate. She wants to wait for her brother, but so that no one will notice her. Evening has come and a large pale moon has already appeared in the sky. But Ricardo Inoaden has not yet returned home. His sister continues to wait for him, hiding behind the stairs. The girl is very puzzled by the fact that her brother is so late. Maybe something bad happened to Ricardo Inoaden. Suddenly, the main character felt a pain in her side. Perhaps she had fallen badly when her father beat her. But that doesn't matter now. She needs to wait for Ricardo and talk to him. Before the girl had time to think about her brother, she heard his steps. Finally, Ricardo returned home. The main character was very happy that her wait ended in success. Hillis Inoaden saw her brother and smiled at him. The young aristocrat greeted Ricardo, expressing her respect and admiration. The main character told her brother that she wanted to talk to him, but he pushed her away and continued to climb the stairs, swaying badly. The girl noticed that Ricardo was drunk today and could barely stand on his feet. She also blamed herself for this. As the young noblewoman's brother climbs the stairs, she apologizes to him for the sacred power of spring manifesting in her. The girl promises to rectify the situation and return the magical power to her brother. Hillis Inoaden dreams of mending her relationship with her brother, so that everything will be fine and he will never be angry with her again. This is the sincere desire of a naive and kind girl. Ricardo Inoaden is drunk today. He did not appreciate his sister's noble impulses and said that he despised her for being unworthy of possessing the sacred power of spring. The young man feels humiliated and insulted. The meek and weak Hillis Inoaden is to blame for everything. Ricardo Inoaden looked at his sister with disdain and told her to get out of his sight immediately. The drunken youth was in no mood to deal with such a pathetic nobody as his sister. The main character tried to stop her brother to talk to him some more. The girl grabbed his hand to hold him back a little and finish expressing her thoughts. But angry and drunk Ricardo Inoaden pushed his sister away. He wants the girl to take her dirty hands off him. Ricardo misjudged his strength and pushed his sister too hard. The girl fell backwards and flew down the stairs. The young man noticed this, but it was too late to fix anything. Even at that moment, the main character still believed that her brother loved her and would always stand up for her. But it was just a pleasant self-deception. Ricardo Inoaden tried to grab his sister who was falling down, but he failed. As always, Hillis Inoaden reached out to her brother in desperation. But she was just a few centimeters short of grabbing Ricardo's saving hand. All these events happened in a few moments. The older brother of the main character has not yet fully realized what he has done. He looks at his sister in confusion and begins to sober up quickly from the excess of adrenaline in his blood. Hillis Inoaden had time to look at her brother one last time. In her eyes, you could see pain, disappointment, fear, and the knowledge that she would die in an instant. It was the terrible look of a doomed and deceived man. Thus ended the first incarnation of the main character, which showed her the true appearance of her family members. But the girl had to go through 6 more incarnations to finally see the light. Now the action takes place in the Farvanon estate. The lord of these lands possesses the sacred power of winter. He received important news from the Inoaden estate. Lord Farvanon sits at his desk in his office, reading an important letter. He now knows that the sacred power of spring is not actually possessed by Ricardo Inoaden, but by his younger sister, Hillis. Lord Farvanon found this information very interesting and useful. He carefully finished reading the letter and smiled mysteriously. It seemed that the Inoaden court would soon face great difficulties. The heir of the House of Farvanon, whose name is Christian, has ordered his personal servant to prepare a carriage. He intends to leave immediately for the Inoaden estate to clarify the situation. The action takes place in the palace of the Inoaden family. Since the main character jumped out of the window and remained unharmed, all the inhabitants of the estate talk only about this incident, spreading the most incredible gossip and rumors. Diego and Ricardo Inoadena always walk around with gloomy faces and are in a depressed state of mind. They talk little and are constantly thinking about something, avoiding others. But the girl Gabrielle is not used to being sad. She does not like the oppressive atmosphere in the Inoaden estate, and she tries with all her might to change the current situation for the better. The main character is relaxing in the park, lying on the soft grass. Suddenly, Gabrielle runs up to her and says that she has been looking for her sister for a long time. She wants to talk to her. Hillis Inoaden slightly opened her eyes and looked at her younger sister, who had unceremoniously disturbed her peace. The girl was not in the mood for communication with anyone right now, but Gabrielle doesn't calm down. She said that she was sick recently, but for some reason her sister didn't deign to visit her, so she had to find the girl herself to talk to her about various things. After Gabrielle learned of her sister's magical abilities, she decided to get closer to her. Now the impudent girl is trying to convince the main character that she was waiting for her visit during her illness. Hillis Inoaden is no longer fooled. She looks at Gabrielle carefully and does not believe a single word she says. This cunning and capricious girl is used to getting her way. But not this time. Gabrielle suddenly realized that her sister had changed a lot. Previously, she would have immediately started asking for forgiveness, but now Hillis Inoaden looks at her capricious sister with disdain and indifference. The girl decided to change her tactics and told her sister that Christian Farvanon would be arriving soon. It would be a wonderful event because this young aristocrat was very handsome. Gabrielle said that Christian had once given her a beautiful pendant. After that, she suggested that the main character try it on. But the girl looked at the precious trinket indifferently and did not answer her sister. The main character's younger sister continues to insist on her own way. She behaves very intrusively, which Hillis Inoaden does not like very much. The main character does not trust her younger sister. She knows that she should not put the pendant on herself. It is a provocation. If Hillis does this, Gabrielle will immediately burst into tears and accuse her sister of stealing the pendant. Gabrielle is quite capable of such a cruel joke. People rarely change, especially if they are spoiled and capricious. Hillis Inoaden remembers her previous experience well and cannot trust her younger sister. The girl had already annoyed the main character with her noisy behavior. Hillis Inoaden told her younger sister to leave immediately and not disturb her while she was resting peacefully, lying on the soft grass. Especially since Gabriel was blocking the warm rays of the sun, the main character realized that the girl would not leave her alone. So she decided to use her magical abilities. This must be done to get rid of the company of the annoying Gabrielle. A few moments later, the pendant that Christian Farvanon had given the girl fell onto the green grass, and Gabrielle was able to feel for herself what the holy power of spring was like in action. The annoying and capricious girl was entangled in a pink vine, and now Gabrielle is hanging upside down in the air. She is scared and does not understand what is happening now. The main character is quite happy with the current situation. Gabrielle tries to cope with her fear, but she fails. For the first time in her life, the girl was punished for her capricious behavior. It was a real blow for her and a good lesson. Hearing the girl's heart-rending screams, the servants immediately came running to help her. But they are completely powerless in this situation. Only Hillis Inoaden can help his younger sister. Christian Farvanon suddenly appeared in the clearing, accompanied by his personal servant. He looks intently at Gabrielle, who is hanging in the air on a rose vine, and admires the sight before her. Gabrielle was not at all embarrassed when she saw Christian Farvanon. She was very happy to see the guest and greeted him joyfully. Lord Farvanon continues to look at the girl hanging upside down and smiles mysteriously. Apparently, he really likes what he sees now. The aristocrat paused for a moment and said that this whole situation was a bit strange and unexpected for him. He thought that the sacred power of spring would obey Ricardo Inoaden, but it turned out that magical abilities were revealed to Hillis Inoaden. After this, Christian Farvanon approached the main character, who was resting on the soft green grass and did not pay any attention to him. The Winter Lord sat down next to the girl, who also sat next to him. He said that he paid his respects to the main character. The nobleman thought that spring roses suited Hillis Inoaden perfectly. Christian Farvanon took a lock of the spring magic mistress's hair in his hand and kissed it. He said that it was a great honor for him to meet the new mistress of the spring roses. This puzzled the girl a little, and she was slightly confused by such pressure and flattery. The Winter Lord turned out to be a very determined man. He immediately invited the main character to go with him to his estate to have a great time. The aristocrat continues to hold the main character's hair to his face. He enjoys her magnificent aroma, which contains the essence of thousands of rose petals. At this point, Gabrielle fell from the rose vine and landed on the ground. The girl really doesn't like that Christine Farvanon is showing signs of attention to her older sister. Hillis Inoaden is a little tired of this whole situation and is about to go to her room. The Winter Lord offered the heroine his hand to see her off, but the proud girl can handle it herself. She pushed the aristocrat's hand away and resolutely headed home. Christian Farvanon did not expect this development. He was used to all the girls in the kingdom groveling before him, but in this case, the Winter Lord received a decisive and irrevocable refusal. This only provoked the nobleman, who has his own plans for Hillis Inoaden. The Winter Lord is very interested in the mistress of the Spring Force. He looks at his hand and is happy that the main character touched it. Christian Farvanon's assistant looks at his master with bewilderment. The aristocrat did not think for long. He suddenly took off to catch up with his new acquaintance. But the main character continues on her way and does not pay any attention to her pursuer. Gradually, the girl disappears among the thick rose bushes. She wants to quickly find herself in her room, away from the annoying people who want something from her and prevent her from resting. The Winter Lord stopped. He realized that he had to let Hillis Inoaden go now. The noble turned to his assistant, whose name was Ranok. He asked the servant if a person's character could change dramatically if he discovered magical powers within himself. Ranok does not know what to answer his master. The Winter Lord found the heroine's behavior very strange. He thought that he would immediately like Hillis Inoaden, but she did not fall under his love spell. This needs to be sorted out urgently. Christian Farvanon's assistant said that his master would be better off turning his attention to Gabrielle, who would be more accommodating and loyal to the Winter Lord. At this time, the main character's younger sister is crying from resentment and grief, surrounded by her maids. She considered herself Christian Farvanon's bride, but the young man neglected her. The Winter Lord thought about his assistant's words. He plucked a beautiful rose and said that Gabrielle was no longer his bride, and he should think of another match for himself. Christian Farvanon has fallen in love with Hillis Inoaden. He looks closely at the wonderful rose in his hand and thinks that this flower is very similar to the mistress of spring magic. The main character changed her mind and went for a short walk among the beautiful rose bushes. She thinks about her previous incarnations and Christian Farvanon. The first death of Hillis Inoaden was due to the betrayal of her brother Ricardo. The girl fell down the stairs and died suddenly. When the main character reincarnated for the second time and opened her eyes, she realized with horror that she had been resurrected on the day when her younger sister's demonic monster had broken loose and caused much trouble. This was the first rebirth of Hillis Inoaden. She felt very lost and alone. The girl did not know what to do next. She did not even have anyone to share her problems with, to tell about them. The main character thinks that all this is some kind of bad dream. She clearly remembers that she fell down the stairs and died. But now the girl has come back to life and found herself in her past, perhaps to fix her future. Only time will tell if this is really true. But nevertheless, during all the incarnations of the main character, there was one person who always supported her. The girl could always talk to him, and it became a little easier for her. It was Christian Farvanon. Sometimes Hillis Inoaden thought that this young aristocrat was pursuing her on purpose. But the girl immediately brushed this thought aside and continued to communicate with the kind and attractive young man. During all his incarnations, the Winter Lord was Gabrielle's fiancé. But for some reason, this young aristocrat always showed great attention to Hillis Inoaden. Moreover, the main character was secretly in love with Christian Farvanon. One day, Hillis Inoaden and the Winter Lord met in the garden. The girl asked the young man why he was there. After all, Gabrielle was not there now. But the nobleman replied that he had come to the garden to talk to his bride's sister. These words discouraged the main character. She did not expect such a development of events. Hillis Inoaden does not want to stand in the way of her sister. She needs to restrain herself. Otherwise, something terrible and irreparable may happen. Christian Farvanon paused for a moment and said that the main character's relatives are terrible people. They humiliate the girl and do not pay her due attention, always leaving her completely alone. Hillis Inoaden looks at her interlocutor attentively and understands that only this person is capable of understanding all her sorrows, pain, and disappointments in this life. This captivates the girl very much. She wants to get closer to the Winter Lord. But this cannot be done. Christian Farvanon gently took a lock of his interlocutor's hair and said that he wanted to protect her from all possible dangers. After that, the young aristocrat invited the girl to go with him to his family estate to stay there forever. The Winter Lord's gaze is full of love for Hillis Inoaden, but the girl understands that she cannot betray her younger sister, who is the young man's fiancé. Hillis Inoaden began to wrinkle her dress hesitantly and said that she could not go with Christian Farvanon because he had made a promise to Gabrielle. The young aristocrat listened attentively to the girl and said that he could quickly solve the problem with her younger sister. All he needed was the consent of the main character to this, and everything would happen immediately without hesitation. The Winter Lord added that the engagement with Gabrielle was a decision of the families for the sake of a dynastic union, and nothing more. There was no love involved. But Hillis Inoaden remembered how sweetly and well the bride and groom had communicated recently. This again prompted her to curb her feelings for the young man. Christian Farvanon smiled and told his beloved that he had been pretending to love Gabrielle all this time. That was what court etiquette and dynastic politics demanded. Hillis had nothing to fear. She must trust the sincerity of her interlocutor. The Winter Lord looked intently at his interlocutor and said that now she should think only about him and her bright future. Happiness is within reach and it is possible. Hillis Inoaden needs to take just one small step and give her permission to break off the engagement with her younger sister. Christian Farvanon gently stroked his beloved's cheek and she grabbed his hand, pressing it to herself. The girl loves this handsome young man very much, but doubts still overcome her. The Winter Lord realized that the main character loved him. This made the young aristocrat happy. He again offered the girl to leave his home and go with him to the Farvanon estate to stay there forever as his wife. But the girl did not answer her interlocutor, and so they parted. The main character went to her room to think about today's conversation with Christian Farvanon. She realizes that all this looks very strange and suspicious. The Winter Lord always begins to court Hillis Inoaden only after she discovers the sacred power of spring within herself. Now, after several reincarnations, the girl, wise with experience, understands that Christian Farvanon does not love her. He wanted to seduce the main character, pursuing his own selfish goals. The cunning young man always wanted to strengthen his fading line with the thick blood of Hillis Inoaden, marrying her and leaving a common offspring that could possess not only the power of winter, but also the magic of spring. The main character was tired of thinking about all sorts of trifles. She called her maid May and told her that she was hungry. The maid happily informed her mistress that she would immediately order dinner for her. Governess May was about to leave her mistress's room. But on the threshold, she met a completely unexpected person. The situation was becoming more and more interesting. Hillis's younger brother, Inoaden, is about to enter the room. He feels uncomfortable because he is embarrassed at the moment. But the young man intends to talk to his sister. But Ricardo Inoaden's embarrassment immediately vanished when he entered the room. The young man immediately pounced on his sister with accusations and insults, pushing away the maid May. He really doesn't like that the main character attacked her younger sister today and hung her upside down on a pink vine. Suddenly, the young aristocrat froze in place. He remembered that Hillis had recently jumped out of a window and nothing had happened to her. He should be more careful with his words. Otherwise, he could pay for it. The main character sits calmly in her chair and waits for what will happen next. But the girl's brother softened his anger and began to talk to her more calmly. Ricardo Inoaden said he heard today about the accident that happened to Gabrielle. Maybe there is some misunderstanding here. The main character looked at her brother carefully and said that she had not even thought of attacking Gabrielle. She had only moved her away from herself because the girl was too annoying and irritated her with her behavior. These words made Ricardo Inoaden very angry. He clenched his teeth tightly to contain his rage and anger. Otherwise, it could end badly for him. But the passionate young man still could not control his emotions. He shouted that the attack on Gabriel has been seen by many people. That cannot be denied. Ricardo Inoaden added that the poor girl was very scared. She is still crying and no one can calm her down. This will be a psychological trauma for her for the rest of her life. But Hillis Inoaden just sneered and said that such a trifle could not be called a real attack. Everyone has difficult situations in life, and Gabrielle is no exception. After these words, the main character began to dance slowly, circling around her room. She is completely relaxed and pleased with herself. This struck Ricardo Inoaden to the depths of his soul. Now Hillis Inoaden will show his older brother what a real attack is. He came here with insults, so he needs to be taught a lesson so that there is no misunderstanding. The slow and smooth dance of the main character gradually turned into a magical ritual. The girl used her magical power, and thick and thorny pink vines fell on Ricardo Inoaden, which instantly knocked him off his feet. The young man lost his balance and fell to the floor. He was confused and scared. The young aristocrat did not expect such a turn of events, but this will serve him as an excellent lesson in the future. The main character looks at her older brother with disdain. She told him that now he knows what a real attack is. It can't be confused with anything else. Ricardo Inoaden sits on the floor in an awkward position. This once proud aristocrat is now humiliated and scared almost to death. He is in a state of shock and does not know what to do now. Has his sister decided to kill him? The young man understands that at this moment his life hangs by a thread. If Hillis Inoaden wants, then there will be no trace of her older brother left. A few drops of blood fell on the floor next to Ricardo Inoaden. But so far nothing serious has happened. The young man has not received serious injuries that could be life-threatening. The maid May is watching everything that is happening in the main character's room. She is very scared and worried about the young master, who is now in great danger. The blood that drips onto the floor oozes from the cut cheek of a young nobleman. He was wounded by a rose vine that is covered in sharp thorns. Ricardo Inoaden asked his sister why she was being so cruel to him. The girl replied that the young man somehow did not understand her words. So, he needed to be taught a practical lesson. Hillis Inoaden leaned over her fallen brother and wiped the blood from his cheek. She said that Gabrielle was very lucky today. If the girl had attacked her little sister for real, she would have bled too. The young nobleman said that he was also very lucky today. If he had not just dodged the sharp thorns of the rose vines, he would no longer be alive. Ricardo Inoaden asked his younger sister in despair if she really didn't care if he suffered because of her. Maybe relatives should be treated more carefully. The main character looked at her brother and smiled contemptuously. Now she was simply triumphant. Finally, the selfish Ricardo Inoaden got what he deserved. At this point, the young man began to understand that his younger sister was not joking with him and that her intentions were quite serious. If Ricardo behaved badly with her, he could pay dearly for it. Hillis Inoaden turned to her maid and said that she wanted to change her room immediately. The girl was tired of this miserable closet. She deserved better. The maid said that she would immediately prepare everything and bring the promised dinner. The once proud and unassailable aristocrat, Ricardo Inoaden, now sits on the floor in an awkward and humiliated pose. He is defeated by his own sister, who is ready to do anything to protect her dignity. From now on, the first roles belong to others. The action takes place in Gabrielle's room. The girl has already recovered a little from the incident in the garden, when she had to hang upside down on a rose vine. A maid came to the main character's younger sister and told her that Hillis Inoaden had changed her room. Now she lives on the 4th floor in luxurious quarters with a beautiful view of the street. This news surprised Gabrielle very much. The maid told the girl that her sister had trashed her room, so it was now unfit for living in. Gabrielle was even more surprised when she heard this. The maid also added that Hillis Inoaden had attacked her elder brother today using her magical powers. This had resulted in a broken wall and a terrible mess in the mistress's room. Gabrielle realized that Ricardo wanted to stand up for her after the incident in the garden. He decided to reason with Hillis, but his sister decided not to give in to his persuasion. As a result, the girl's brother suffered because of her. Ricardo Inoaden was supposed to scold Hillis, and she was supposed to accept the punishment meekly. But this time, something went wrong. Gabrielle is very surprised by these events. The girl senses that something is wrong. She runs up to her maid and shakes her violently, trying to get the truth out of her. But the maid has already told Gabrielle everything she knows. Now the girl is very scared. She thinks that Hillis Inoaden has moved into the room next to hers to abuse her. This is all some kind of nightmare. It is necessary to sort this all out urgently. Otherwise, the consequences could be simply unimaginable. Could it be that the elder sister decided to destroy her brother and Gabrielle? Suddenly, the girl heard a strange sound outside her room. She thinks that her older sister is planning something against her. Despite her fear, Gabrielle decided to see what was really going on in the hallway. Maybe it wasn't that bad. The girl carefully looked out from behind the door into the corridor and saw her father standing near a luxurious rosebush and carefully studying something. Diego Inoaden turned at the sound of the door opening and saw Gabrielle watching him. He greeted his youngest daughter and asked what she wanted from him. The girl looked at her father carefully and asked why there was this huge rosebush in the hallway. Had Diego Inoaden really placed it there? The head of the family replied that it was his job. He began to fear what Hillis would do next, so he decided to fence himself off from her with a strong and dense planting of roses. This way, the eldest daughter would not be able to harm her father. Diego Inoaden hastened to reassure Gabrielle and said that she was now out of danger and could sleep peacefully in her room. Hillis would not get to her. The girl listened attentively to her father and said that in the fenced-off half of the palace there was a beautiful dress that she had recently bought. She was very sorry to lose it so soon. Gabrielle added that she was going to wear this luxurious dress to the upcoming ball in honor of the Kalisha family, who had subjugated the sacred power of summer. It was just awful. The girl didn't know what to do now and how to get her favorite dress back. Diego Inoaden looks at his youngest daughter with bewilderment and does not know how to help her in this situation. It is better to distance himself from Hillis now and not meet her. Capricious Gabrielle continues to wail and complain about her terrible fate. Will she really have to part with her luxurious dress, which she can no longer buy anywhere? The girl's father sympathizes with her, but continues to insist on his own. His defenses are weakening, and he is almost ready to make a concession to his daughter and allow her to go shopping for the dress. Gabrielle continues to persuade her father, but Diego Inoaden no longer wants to risk the health and well-being of his children by handing them over to the abuse of his eldest daughter, who is angry with the whole world. Diego Inoaden's patience finally ran out, and he yelled at Gabrielle. The angry father of the family said that the girl must obey him. If she violated the ban, she would be severely punished. Besides, Diego said that Gabrielle would not go to the ball dedicated to the Kalisha family. Therefore, the girl would not need a dress. After these words, Diego Inoaden hurried away. Gabriel tries to say something to his father in his defense, but the head of the estate remains adamant. He quickly left the corridor and did not listen to the persuasions of his youngest daughter, which he was already quite tired of. The girl is in a state of shock now. She has already forgotten about her luxurious dress. Gabrielle cannot believe that her father raised his voice to her for the first time in his life. It is simply terrible. Never before had such a thing happened in the girl's life. And now this day had come. Diego Inoaden was angry with his youngest daughter, whom he had previously doted on. Gabrielle realized that from this moment on, her life would change completely. On the other side of the hedge that Diego Inoaden placed in the corridor of the estate, the main character stands, accompanied by her personal maid. They do not understand where these rose bushes came from and why they are needed here. Maid May noticed that the hedge was also located outside the windows of the estate. She said that her mistress was blocked from leaving her room. Hillis Inoaden does not lose her composure. The girl calmly asked her maid what date the Kikia family ball was scheduled for. The maid replied that the party was scheduled for 3 days later. The main character yawned demonstratively and said that there was nothing to worry about now. She would sort out the problem of her being locked in the room. The mistress added that her subordinate could go to sleep for now, because that was what she was going to do now. Maid May was very surprised by Hillis Inoaden's unshakable calm. The mistress of spring magic has gone to her new quarters to get a good night's sleep. Maid May stands in the hallway, unsure of what to do next. The governess reflected on the fact that her young mistress maintained an icy calm even in a situation like this. All this surprised and delighted the maid. She had never noticed this in Hillis Inoaden before. Maid May is also afraid that she will have to spend the rest of her life in captivity, being in the Inoaden estate. This is simply terrible. Something must be done urgently to avoid this. Several days have passed. Maid May hurries to deliver food to her mistress, walking along a dark corridor. She complains about her cruel fate and is unhappy that she cannot leave the confinement she has found herself in. But if you think about it, the life of the maid is not so bad. The young mistress does not burden her subordinate with difficult work. She treats her well and is always ready to reward her generously. After these thoughts, the governess's mood immediately improved. Maid May thought about another problem. The Kikia family's ball was to take place today, but the young lady would not be able to attend because she was locked in. Today is the celebration of Princess Kalikia's birthday. This is a very important event in the life of the royal aristocracy, and Hillis Inoaden is very much welcome to attend. Ricardo Inoaden will also be unable to attend the upcoming ball due to a recent injury. It turns out that only Diego Inoaden will be able to represent the family at the celebration. However, for an ordinary maid, it doesn't matter. These issues don't particularly bother her. For Maid May, it is important to fulfill her direct duties and serve her young mistress. The maid knocked on the door of her mistress's room and said that she had brought her food. But for some reason, no one answered the maid. This seemed strange to her. The governess began to worry a little about her mistress and entered her room without asking. Maid May froze in surprise when she saw that Hillis Inoaden had escaped from her chambers through the window. The main character dealt with the house arrest problem as she had promised. Hillis Inoaden decided to have a great time to breathe in the air of freedom. She climbed onto the roof of a small house and admired the magnificent sunset. Now that the main character has discovered magical abilities, her life has become much easier and more fun. The girl can not only fight opponents, but also easily move in a variety of places. Hillis Inoaden has no trouble climbing to or from great heights. She is assisted by the sacred power of spring, which is capable of much. But now it's time to think about more pressing matters. The main character knows that today there will be a ball in honor of Princess Kalikia's birthday. This is a very important event that cannot be missed. Hillis Inoaden thought for a moment and decided that she could not show up to such an important event empty-handed. Princess Kalikia was to receive a worthy gift from the main character today, but the girl would have to work a little to achieve this. She resolutely headed to a secret place where she could get what she needed. But first, the main character needs to eliminate the guards of this hiding place. The mistress of spring power cannot be stopped by a sword or a dagger. Within a minute, all the guards were defeated by the girl with her magical abilities. Hillis Inoaden descends into the deep cellar by a long staircase and thinks about the 4 great families that possess the magical energy of the seasons. These families always tried to marry among themselves so as not to lose their magical powers. But the Kalikia family was an exception. The members of this family lost their power because they had married among themselves for a long time. Finally, the main character went down the basement and reached her goal. She carefully opened the door of the prison cell and entered it to take with her the valuable prisoner of this prison. Hilis Inoaden looked at the stone floor of the prison cell and noticed that on it lay a whole scattering of precious rubies that resembled drops of blood. The floor of the prison cell is strewn with precious rubies. A child lies on the hard bunk. He is chained and asleep. Apparently, this unfortunate child is somehow connected to the jewels that are lying around him. The main character was very happy when she saw the sleeping child. She realized that she had achieved her goal and found what she was looking for. This wonderful child would be a good gift for Princess Kikia. Hilis Inoadin is also pleased to have beaten her competitors, who have long wanted to get hold of this wonderful child who can produce precious rubies in an instant in large quantities. The whole secret is that the child's magical blood can turn into precious stones if it leaves his body. It's a cruel truth, but that's how nature has decreed it. The main character approached the sleeping child and leaned over him. For a moment, the girl felt sorry for this unfortunate child, who was guilty only of being endowed by nature with exceptional abilities. The boy, exhausted by his confinement in prison, woke up and opened his green eyes. He tried to see who had disturbed him and interrupted his light sleep. The child looked at Hilis Inoaden and asked her if she was the goddess of death. Had she come here to end his torment and send him to heaven? The unfortunate boy thought for a moment and assumed that he had already died and simply had not noticed it. And now the beautiful goddess of death had come to him to take his immortal soul with her. The main character hurried to calm the young man and said that he was still alive. But she doesn't know yet if it's for the best. Perhaps the boy wants to die quickly, but he shouldn't rush into it yet. The wonderful boy looked at his beautiful guest with pleading and fear and asked her to immediately stop his earthly torment, which had become unbearable. The unfortunate young man is filled with horror and despair. He cannot live like this any longer and does not want to continue this miserable existence in a prison cell, where he serves only as a source of precious rubies for his tormentors, who imprisoned him in this stone bag for the purpose of easy money. Hilis Inoaden looked closely at the wonderful boy and said that she would fulfill his request if he wanted it so much. The main character gently stroked the young man's head and said that she was ready to fulfill his wish. The wonderful boy deserves not only pity, but also peace. The touched child looked joyfully at his savior. He was ready to kneel before her and thank her endlessly for the service she had promised to render him. The wonderful boy burst into tears. He said that he was very grateful to the main character, and large tears rolled down his cheeks, which gradually began to turn into transparent diamonds. The main character picked up one of these diamonds and turned to the unfortunate young man. She wants to tell him something important. The boy's future fate will depend on it. Hilis Inoaden looks closely at the diamond that was formed from the tear of a beautiful child. She told the boy not to rush to thank her. First, there was something that needed to be done. The girl told the boy that she first wanted to return him to where he belonged from the very beginning. If after that he wanted to die, then Hilis Inoaden would immediately fulfill his request and kill him. The main character added that she was not the goddess of death and wanted to help the wonderful boy find a new life. If, of course, he wanted it. The young man listened attentively to his interlocutor and was very surprised by her words. Hilis Inoaden decided to get down to business right away. She used her magical abilities and broke the chains that bound the miraculous child. Now the young man can follow his savior. The main character took the wonderful child in her arms because he had almost no strength to move on his own. After that, the girl said her name and told the boy to remember it forever. But suddenly, something unexpected happened. The main character and her companion felt a quick and strong gust of wind, which extinguished the torches illuminating the prison corridor in which the uninvited guest appeared. Hilis Inoaden instantly realized that she was about to meet her competitor, who wanted to take possession of the wonderful boy for his own selfish purposes. In the darkness, the main character and the young man managed to discern the dim glow of blue eyes. In front of them stands a stranger who is very angry because someone has already beaten him to it and taken possession of the wonderful child, exuding precious stones. A few moments later, the stranger with the blue eyes revealed himself completely and told Hilis Inoaden to give him immediately the wonderful boy he had come for. The main character is determined. She is not afraid of a strange stranger who claims the right to possess a magical young man who exudes precious stones. The uninvited guest did not expect such a turn of events. He carefully examines Hilis Inoaden and begins to understand that he will not be able to take possession of the wonderful boy so easily. The main character looked at the stranger who blocked her path and hugged her charge even tighter. She is ready to crush anyone who stands in her way. The girl has enough magic power for this. The rival of the savior of the wonderful boy sniffed the air and said that he smelled a familiar aroma. Such a magnificent pink scent can only be emitted by a member of the Inoaden family who has mastered the sacred power of spring. The stranger looks closely at the girl who is holding a wonderful boy in her arms. But he is surprised that it is not Ricardo Inoaden who is standing in front of him now, but his younger sister. The main character's competitor asked her if she knew who the boy was that she was holding in her arms. The girl replied that she knew perfectly well who she was saving. Otherwise, she wouldn't be here. The magical boy that the main character is holding in her arms and trying to save is the last heir of one of the 4 mighty families. His name is Mago Kikia. He inherited the magical power of his family, which was considered lost forever. There is a prophecy that this wonderful boy will one day become a king. Mago Kikia was kidnapped by greedy businessmen who learned of his divine gift of creating precious stones. After that, the wonderful boy was chained in a dungeon. The stranger has made sure that Hillis Inoaden knows the story of the magical youth. Now he demands that the boy be given to him, because the Kikia family has entrusted him with the task of rescuing him and returning him to his native land. The main character's rival looks at her attentively and waits for her answer. But something tells the stranger that the girl does not believe his words. Perhaps he should try another way to get Mago Kikia. Hillis Inoaden told the stranger that she saw no reason to trust him. He had to provide evidence that he was telling the truth. Otherwise, the liar could get into big trouble. The stranger's patience began to wear thin. The mysterious aristocrat decided to introduce himself to the girl to avoid any misunderstandings and said that his name was Axian Berger. He was the head of one of the 4 great families. The main character looked at her interlocutor indifferently and said that one name was not enough for her. Hillis Inoaden prefers to believe only in indestructible facts. In this case, Axian Berger is forced to offer a compromise. He can deliver Mago Kikia to his family with the girl. She will make sure that nothing happens to the boy on the way. In her past life, Hillis Inoaden accepted her rival's offer and paid dearly for it. This time, she will do things differently and not to her own detriment. The main character made a slight and imperceptible movement of her hand, and in an instant, her powerful magical power manifested itself. Axian Berger did not expect such a development of events. The girl resolutely said that she did not want to go anywhere with him, and she would not give him the boy. Thanks to her divine powers, Hillis Inoaden instantly escaped from the prison and found herself above. Night had already fallen, and the entire area was bathed in the soft light of the silvery moon. Axian Berger couldn't do anything. The heroine beat him to it and took the wonderful heir of the Kikia family with her. Now the aristocrat needs to come up with another plan to achieve his goal. The deceived aristocrat extended his hand after the suddenly disappeared competitor and said that next time he would not let his chance slip away. Now the head of the Berger family knows who he is dealing with. He is always ready to meet a worthy opponent. Hillis Inoaden had time to notice Axian Berger's gesture and heard his last words. She smiled meaningfully and said that next time she would greet the cunning aristocrat as he deserved. Axian Berger was left alone in the dark prison cell he had come to take Mago Kikia, with nothing left to do but rant and rave about his failure. But a moment later, the aristocrat's mood changed dramatically. He decided to fight to the end with a worthy opponent and not lag behind her. This game even seemed a little funny to Axian Berger. At this time, the ball has already begun at the Kikia estate, which is dedicated to the princess's birthday. The guests have already gathered. Beautiful music is playing everywhere. The ballroom is drowning in luxury. All those present at the celebration enjoy his gifts and have a wonderful time, chatting with each other and drinking sparkling champagne. The guests love and respect the heroine of today's celebration, who has prepared a magnificent holiday for them. Christian Farvanon is also among the guests at the party. He drinks champagne and watches the aristocrats who are present. The young nobleman hopes to meet Hillis Inoaden at the ball. Suddenly, Diego Inoaden approached the Winter Lord. He was very happy to see Christian Farvanon. The father of the main character asked how his youngest daughter's fiancé was doing. Diego Inoaden sat down in the chair next to his companions. The nobles began to talk. The Winter Lord said that he had recently visited the Inoaden estate, but had not been able to meet its owner. The main character's father smiled at his interlocutor and said that after the incident with Gabriel, who happened to be in the park, his daughter asked him not to receive guests for a while. Therefore, the Winter Lord must excuse him. Christian Farvanon listened attentively to Diego Inoaden, who apologized to him. He continues to drink champagne and pretends not to be offended by the father of the main character, who said that his son had discovered the sacred power of spring. The Winter Lord smiled mysteriously when he heard the words of his interlocutor. He understands that Diego Inoaden is trying to deceive him and convince him that Ricardo Inoaden, and not his daughter Hillis, was able to subjugate the sacred power of spring. Diego continues his chatter and ingratiates himself with Christian Farvanon, trying to gain his favor. The master of the Inoaden estate needs the Winter Lord as a son-in-law and ally. Christian smiled knowingly and said that he wanted to break off his engagement to Gabrielle. The Winter Lord had good reasons for this, which he did not wish to discuss at the moment. Diego Inoaden's good mood immediately turned to anger when he heard these words. He realized that Christian Inoaden did not respect him or his family. It was a direct insult. The father of the main character was very angry. He grabbed the armrest of his chair with his hand to contain his emotions and calm down a little. Diego Inoaden managed to control himself and said that he would never agree to break the engagement. Such important agreements cannot be broken so easily. However, Christian Farvanon does not want to quarrel with his potential father-in-law today. He proposed a compromise, saying that the engagement can be continued if the bride is replaced. Diego Inoaden listened attentively to his interlocutor. He remains angry with the Winter Lord. The proud aristocrat finds all this to be some kind of disgusting and insulting game. Christian Farvanon hurried to calm the head of the Inoaden family and explain everything to him. He said that the sacred power of spring had definitely not been revealed to Ricardo, but to Hillis, Inoaden. The Winter Lord had seen it himself. That was why he had changed his mind about marrying Gabrielle. Diego Inoaden listened to his interlocutor and said that he had made erroneous conclusions. In fact, the sacred power of spring had submitted to Ricardo. The Winter Lord does not trust the cunning and deceitful nobleman who wants to mislead him. Christian Farvanon was tired of listening to the lies of the heroine's father. He stood up from his chair and said that Diego Inoadenu needed to publicly announce the change of generations in his family. The Winter Lord promised to be the first to offer his congratulations when this ritual took place. After these words, Christian Farvanon politely said goodbye to his vis-a-vis and quickly left. Diego Inoaden was left alone with his bad thoughts, which made his head spin. The father of the main character is very angry now. His insides are filled with the anger of helplessness, which requires an immediate outlet. Diego Inoaden thought for a moment and said, clenching his teeth tightly, that he urgently needs to think of a way to help transfer the sacred power of spring to his son Ricardo. Now, let me tell you a little about the great family of Kikia. In this family, there were two sisters who were called the Princesses of Kikia. But one day, fate decreed that one of the noble princesses was expelled from her family. This was a strong blow to the authority and well-being of the great aristocratic family. Now, the only heir of the Kikia family is the youngest princess, whose name is Violeta. This noble lady is very much loved and respected throughout the kingdom. Many aristocrats would like to win the heart of this incomparable beauty. Christian Farvanon decided to pay his respects to Violeta Kikia and congratulate her on her birthday. He approached the noble lady and kissed her hand, showering her with exquisite compliments. The Winter Lord is famous throughout the kingdom for his ability to court the fair sex. Violeta Kikia thanked the polite aristocrat for his congratulations. The girl was very pleased. The noble lady smiled sweetly at the lady's man who had conquered the holy power of winter. After that, she decided to ask Christian Farvanon a few questions that had been of great interest to her lately. Violeta Kikia asked her interlocutor why he attended today's celebration without his bride. Perhaps something bad had happened to her. But the Winter Lord said that nothing terrible had happened. His bride Gabrielle simply could not come to the ball due to the circumstances. Christian Farvanon also added that he did not see the head of the Berger family in the hall. This was very strange. Summer Lady smiled mysteriously and said that Axian Berger was currently fulfilling her request, which was very important to her. If the Autumn Lord succeeded in this matter, it would be the best gift for Violeta Kikia on her birthday. Christian Farvanon listened attentively to his interlocutor and smiled sweetly at her. He wished Violeta Kikia that her wish would come true as soon as possible and that she would receive her cherished gift. After that, the Winter Lord looked at the dancing guests and offered the hero of the day to share the next dance with her. But this time, Christian Farvanon was in for a failure. Suddenly, Violeta's cousin, Terzo Kikia, approached the chatting aristocrats. He smiled politely at the Winter Lord and said that the next dance with the Summer Lady had already been promised to him. The young aristocrat also said that he wanted to take on the role of escort for his sister. After that, Terzo Calicia congratulated Violeta on her birthday and expressed his respect. The young man's intervention greatly puzzled Christian Farvanon. The cousin of the hero of the occasion approached her and kissed her hand, saying that she was more beautiful today than ever. This act finally upset the Winter Lord's plans and also spoiled his mood. Violeta Kikia was delighted by her brother's visit, but she was slightly embarrassed by the young man's excessive politeness. The girl said that he could not accompany her every time some celebration took place. She had to give way to other strong men. Terzo Calicia did not lose his composure when he heard these words. He smiled sweetly at his cousin and said that for now he would be content with the next dance she had promised him. This development suits the princess, who is spoiled by male attention. She says that Terzo Calicia can count on the next dance with her until someone else replaces him. The girl thinks that this joke is very funny. When the Winter Lord saw Violeta Kikia condescendingly teasing her cousin, he realized that he still had a chance to win the princess's favor. Christian Farvanon's mood improved again. The hero of the occasion told the Winter Lord that she wanted to attend to the other guests now. She was about to leave, but something unexpected happened. Violeta Kikia looked in surprise at Hillis Inoaden, who had entered the ballroom. This puzzled the princess greatly because the unexpected guest was carrying her brother Mago. Hillis Inoaden has her magical power concentrated around her. It has affected everyone around her who felt it. The princess covered herself with her hands to avoid any damage. The main character walked towards the heroine of today's celebration with Mago Kikia in her arms. The girl's face was full of determination and courage. Violeta Kikia came to her senses after the initial shock. She looked closely at the unexpected guest and asked her how she had ended up there and why she was in such a strange state. The Winter Lord also looks at Hillis Inoaden and cannot understand what is happening here. Christian Farvanon longed to meet the main character, but he did not think that it would happen like this. Blood began to drip from the wounds on Mago Kalikia's arm and turn into precious rubies. Violeta noticed this. At first, she couldn't believe her eyes, but after a few moments, she understood everything. Her birthday present was delivered by Hillis Inoaden. The surprised princess bent down to pick up the precious ruby and finally make sure that in front of her was her brother, who possessed miraculous powers. Now Violeta Kikia realized that in front of her was indeed her brother, for whom she had sent Axian Berger. The girl covered her face with her hands from the shock she had just experienced. At this time, Mago Kikia is sleeping quietly and peacefully in the arms of Hillis Inoaden. He is too tired from imprisonment, and now he needs to regain his strength. The main character, with a light step so as not to wake up her charge, headed towards Princess Kikia to finish the job she had started and give her the birthday present she had brought. Hillis Inoaden carefully handed over her precious bundle to Violeta Kikia and said that she brought this gift especially for her. The girl hopes that she was able to please the birthday girl. The main character looked into the princess's eyes and said that with pleasure and respect, she was returning to her the dear child that the great Kikia family had once lost. When Hillis Inoaden had completed her mission, she added that the Kikia family should take better care of their heir this time. A moment later, the main character disappeared in a magical pink vortex. At this time, the guests who had come to the festive evening had recovered a little from the shock they had experienced and began to discuss what had just happened here. Everyone recognized Hillis Inoaden, but no one could understand what kind of boy she had brought and given to Princess Kikia. A few minutes later, Axian Berger appeared in a dark magical vortex. He does not retreat and pursues Hillis Inoaden on her heels. But this time, the proud aristocrat was late. The main character got ahead of him again. When the head of the Burgit family entered the ballroom, he immediately noticed that Violeta Kikia was holding her younger brother in her arms. The aristocrat understood everything in an instant. Hillis Inoaden had already been here and returned the wonderful boy to his family. Axian Berger looked around, hoping to see his rival, but the main character had already left the ballroom with her magic power. The young aristocrat was late again. He was very upset about it. Axian Berger was not used to losing, but this time, Hillis Inoaden won this battle. The head of the Berger family noticed Diego Inoadena among the guests. He said that he did not know about the change of magical generations in the family of the main character's father. These words made Diego embarrassed. Axian Burgett bowed politely to the head of the Inoadan house. He apologized for his ignorance of the latest news. But there is an excuse for this. The young aristocrat has been very busy lately and has no time to follow the latest developments in the lives of the great families of the kingdom. Diego Inoadan literally darkened with shame and anger. He tried to convince all the aristocrats that his son Ricardo was the heir to the sacred power of spring. But now everyone knows that the true heir of the Inoaden house is Hillis. Axian Burgett turned his attention back to Mago Kikia. He said that today was a truly joyful event. A once-lost family member had returned home. This gladdened the nobleman's heart, and he expressed his joy to Violeta and her great family. The head of the Berger house congratulated the hero of the day on her birthday and expressed joy that the Kikia family had now regained their magical abilities, which were considered lost forever. Violeta Kikia hugs her little brother tightly, who continues to sleep quietly and soundly in her arms. The princess is happy to have found her relative again, in whom the sacred power of summer has been embodied. Tears of joy appeared in Violeta's eyes. This was the best gift she could have received for her birthday. Axian Burgett looks closely at the happy princess who has found her younger brother again. The noble aristocrat's heart beats joyfully. Today was full of emotions. And who knows, perhaps this day was the beginning of events that will bring even more surprises to the heroes of this story. It was a moonlit night. The ball in honor of Princess Kalikia's birthday was over and the guests had gone home. The main character had long since returned to her estate and her father had just arrived home. When Diego Inoadan crossed the threshold of his estate, he immediately began to look for his daughter. The head of the family met the maid May and asked where Hillis was now. The maid replied that the girl was currently in the dining room. The main character's father immediately rushed to the dining room to meet her there and have a serious talk. Diego Inoadan is very angry with his daughter for her behavior at the party today. The angry aristocrat quickly opened the door to the room and saw his daughter there. He immediately began to scold her for today's thoughtless misdeed, which had disgraced him and exposed him as a liar in front of the aristocrats of the entire kingdom. But Hillis Inoadan pays absolutely no attention to her angry father. The girl calmly enjoys the magnificent dinner that her maid May has served her. Diego Inoadan is in an indescribable rage. He continued to scold his daughter and said that she would not dare to embarrass him anymore and make him look like a stupid liar. The girl continues to eat calmly. She has decided not to pay any attention to her hysterical ancestor, who treats her as if she were a stranger's child. But the head of the Inoadan family continues to rage. He runs up to the dining table and slams it down with all his might, demanding an explanation from his daughter as to why she has disrupted the Kikia family ball tonight. The main character calmly looked at the upturned glass, which contained clean and fresh water. The girl does not want to talk to her father about her affairs. She simply does not need it. Hillis Inoadan thought for a moment and told Diego that he should have seen it all today. She showed up at the party to give the hero of the occasion a gift. Diego Inoadan can't believe his ears. He saw everything perfectly well at today's ball, but he absolutely doesn't understand the reasons why his daughter got involved in this strange story with the return of the heir of the House of Kikia. The main character listened to the arguments of her hysterical and stupid father. The girl thought for a while and sighed sadly. Diego Inoadan still didn't understand anything today. His daughter did an important and kind deed for the Kikia family today. The main character's father continues to be angry. He paused for a few seconds to think about the situation and then said that he would not leave his daughter's stupid behavior unpunished. So Diego Inoadan will have to teach Hillis a lesson if his words don't reach her. Now the obstinate girl will learn her true place and will never show her unbridled ego again. But Hillis Inoadan is not going to tolerate her father's bullying any longer. The girl got up from the dinner table and decided to use her magical powers to show Diego Inoadan that she is not to be trifled with. The head of the family instantly regretted that he had so thoughtlessly given vent to his emotions and attacked his daughter with his accusations and moralizing. He realized that he was now in real danger. Diego Inoadan felt a strange feeling. For a few moments, the aristocrat thought that his daughter was magically sucking his strength and life energy out of him. The heroine's father was very surprised because he thought it was impossible. Gabrielle and Ricardo heard a noise coming from the dining room. They hurried into the room to figure out what was going on there. The boys quickly ran into the dining room and were dumbfounded with surprise and shock. They saw that the older sister had used her magical power against the father of the family, but the main character did not regret for a second what she had just done. The girl looked at her relatives and smiled mysteriously, very pleased with her actions. Let's leave Hillis Inoaden and her relatives for a moment. Let's look at the history of the Kikia family. This family has a magical artifact called the Tear of Kikia. It is a rare and valuable stone that appears from the tears of family members. It can increase the magical power of its owner if it is near his body. But the best way to increase your magical power is to eat this precious stone. Then the divine power increases several times, making its owner invincible. Hillis Inoaden ate the Tear of Kikia when she was in prison and saved a wonderful boy. Now she has become invulnerable and can absorb other people's powers for some time, adding them to her energy reserves. Only members of this family know about the enormous possibilities of the magical artifact Tear of Kikia. But the main character was able to learn this secret and immediately use this knowledge to become invincible, at least for a while. That's why Diego Inoaden is now kneeling in the middle of the dining room of his estate in front of his daughter, completely at a loss. The heroine's father clearly felt that she had just taken all of his power. Hillis Inoaden walked slowly towards her father and said that he must now pass on the family mark to her and make her his heir, because this mark was passed down from generation to generation to the strongest member of the family. Diego Inoaden does not want to pass on the family mark to his daughter. He was preparing it for his son Ricardo, but there is nothing to be done. In the current situation, the mark must be given to Hillis. A few moments later, the brand of the head of the Inoaden family was on the chest of the main character. The girl felt a pleasant tingling and soft warmth. She really liked this feeling. Now Hillis Inoaden is the officially recognized head of her family. Nothing can stop her in her endeavors. From now on, everything will be completely different for the girl and her relatives. The main character looked at her father and thanked him for his help and trust. There was a hint of irony in the girl's voice. But it didn't matter now. Hillis Inoaden had achieved what she had dreamed of for so long. She had become the head of the family. Diego Inoaden is in a state of shock. He can't believe that he has lost his status. The aristocrat doesn't know what to do next. The main character continues to put moral pressure on her father, who never loved her. The girl said that she would use her power until her death, and no one would be able to stop her. She no longer needs her father's services. Diego Inoaden is deeply offended. He strained all his remaining strength to endure this hellish humiliation. Hillis Inoaden said that she was now the head of the clan, and from now on, all family members would unquestioningly carry out all her orders and wishes. This was not up for discussion. Ricardo Inoaden and his younger sister Gabrielle had been watching everything that had just happened in the dining room. Finally, the young aristocrat decided to intervene in the events that were taking place. Ricardo Inoaden is very upset. He is nervous, but he tries to contain his emotions. The young man turned to the main character and said that she has gone crazy because she cannot treat her own father so cruelly. The young aristocrat demanded that Hillis Inoaden apologize to Diego immediately. Otherwise, he would not stand aside and would come up with a way to punish the girl. Gabriel remains silent and nods, supporting his older brother. The main character listened attentively to Ricardo Inoaden and looked at him with disdain. For a moment, it seemed to the girl that in front of her was some kind of pathetic bug that could only squeak helplessly. Hillis Inoaden asked her older brother what he could do to her if she didn't apologize to her father, who never loved her. It was all just ridiculous. Ricardo was sweating from the tension and stress. He wanted to quickly respond to his sister's barb, but the words froze on his lips because the young man did not know how he could resist Hillis Inoaden, who had now become the head of his family. The main character's older brother was embarrassed. He had to suppress his emotions and impulses, which led to him slouching in helplessness. Hillis noticed this immediately. The girl decided to take advantage of the situation and boldly declared that she was now the full owner here. If Ricardo was not satisfied with something, he could leave the estate and go into exile. After that, the main character decided to leave the canteen. In the end, she told her older brother that a coward like him would never dare to do something brave. He would prefer to endure humiliation. Gabrielle remains silent and does not interfere in the current situation. She looks at her father with pity and thinks that today he looks very weak and pitiful. The spoiled and capricious girl realized that her older sister became the head of the Inoaden family, and from today, her life will change dramatically. Frightened and confused, Gabrielle frantically tries to figure out what to do now that her father and brother have suffered a crushing defeat. The action takes place in the estate of Axian Burgett. He sleeps and sees a very strange dream. He dreams of a girl who is wrapped in menacing vines which are covered with sharp thorns. The head of the Burgett family had a feeling that he knew this mysterious girl whom he could not clearly see in his dreams. The stranger smiles mysteriously at Axian Burgett and says that it is all over for him now. He is lost, and there is nothing that can be done about it. After that, the girl disappears into the darkness. The aristocrat tries to catch up with the mysterious stranger, but he fails. After that, Axian Burgett wakes up in a cold sweat, in his bed. It's all very strange. This has never happened to the young man before. Axian Burgett is in bed, trying to figure out why he had such a strange dream that disturbed him so much. It's evening. The head of the Berger family has decided to do an important job with his brother, whose name is Suleiman. But the aristocrat has a headache from the noise that is heard nearby. Suleiman Burgett pays no attention to the noise. He is calmly eating delicious cookies and is in a great mood. His cloak and hands are stained with blood. The young aristocrats continue their conversation and discuss important matters concerning auctions where magical artifacts can theoretically be purchased. Axian and Suleiman Burgett track down the soul gems that possess magical powers. The brothers pass by a beautiful fountain, which caught the attention of the head of the Burgett family. He told Suleiman that it was necessary to track down all the artifacts and prevent the Kalikia stones from spreading throughout the kingdom. This could have dire consequences. It was also necessary to urgently deal with the organized underground trade in artifacts. Suleiman Burgett looked at his brother carefully and said that he had not looked well lately. Axian replied that he had trouble sleeping at night. That was why he was a little tired. The aristocrat also added that he has strange dreams in which he meets a mysterious girl. She seems familiar to him, but he cannot see her clearly. But the horror of the dreams is that this mysterious stranger with a smile on her face kills people. This makes the blood run cold in your veins. Suleiman Burgett listened carefully to his older brother and said that it all sounded scary. But the carefree young man continued to eat his cookies. The head of the Burgett family does not pay attention to the simplicity of his brother's judgments. He is now thinking about other things, trying to understand his strange dreams. The aristocrat remembered Hillis Inoaden, and she reminded him of the stranger from his recent nightmares. The action takes place in the Inoaden estate. The main character is in the bathroom. She suddenly feels ill and throws up in a garbage can. Hillis Inoaden felt a little better after emptying her stomach. The girl thinks that she simply overate at dinner today, because the steak was very tasty and big. But all this is absolutely unimportant for the main character now, because she managed to achieve her goals and became the head of the Inoaden family. Now the mark of the head of the family is on her. And this is wonderful. The girl looks closely at the golden brand on her chest as she approaches the mirror. She understands that now she will be able to do a lot. Hillis Inoaden wants to finish what she started during all her 7 reincarnations. From now on, she has enough strength and resources to do it. The main character thought that she was no longer interested in revenge because she had already killed all her relatives who had offended her at the end of her 7th incarnation. But this did not bring the girl the desired relief and joy. At first, Hillis Inoaden was glad that she had been able to pay back her offenders properly. But then she realized that instant death was too easy a punishment for them. The girl was disappointed. It was not worth wasting her energy on such pathetic people. From now on, the main character will spend her sacred power of spring on more worthy deeds and goals. Hillis Inoaden looks at herself in the mirror and realizes that she already has a real goal in life, but she still needs to do a lot to achieve it. The girl's look is full of courage and determination. The next day has arrived. The main character is drinking her morning tea in the fresh air among the beautiful rose bushes that smell intoxicatingly fragrant. Hillis Inoaden has told her maid May that she wants to update her wardrobe. The girl's maid was very happy and approved of this great idea. The main character should finally emphasize her natural beauty. The maid said that she would urgently prepare everything so that she and her mistress could go shopping and have a wonderful time. Suddenly, Gabrielle appears in the park, running quickly towards her older sister and calling out loudly. Diego's favorite, Inoadina, dressed as always in a beautiful outfit and in a great mood, ran up to the main character and greeted her. Even the maid may notice that Gabrielle was being especially kind and polite to her mistress today. The maid found it all very suspicious. But the main character already has a lot of experience in dealing with Gabrielle and knows that she should not be trusted under any circumstances. Hillis's younger sister, Inoaden, began to unceremoniously shower her with compliments and said that she ran to the park only to wish her good morning. The main character calmly drinks her tea and does not pay any attention to the blatant flattery. Suddenly, Gabrielle turned her attention to Hillis Inoaden's clothes and said that she shouldn't be out in the street in just a nightgown. After all, she could catch a cold. The main character's younger sister was not at a loss in the current situation and threw her shawl over Hillis's shoulders. The girl accepts this favor with complete indifference, realizing that Gabrielle is simply sucking up to her. Maid May watches the cunning girl's behavior closely and can't believe her eyes. Is Gabrielle really being nice to her older sister and trying her best to please her? After this, the cunning girl expressed her desire to have a cup of tea with Hillis Inoaden and talk about various family matters. The main character listened attentively to her younger sister and laughed. She found such frank and straightforward flattery from Gabrielle very funny. The new head of the Inoaden family smiled again and told her younger sister that she was free to do as she pleased in her own house. Gabrielle was very happy that her sister allowed her to drink tea with her. She ordered the maid May to bring another cup of the drink. The maid asked her mistress if the shopping trip was really being postponed. But Hillis Inoaden immediately decided to dispel all doubts of her governess. She stood up and said that she had another idea. There is no need for long preparations. The main character will go shopping immediately using her magic power. In an instant, a magical whirlwind arose and enveloped Hillis Inoaden to carry her to the desired location. The main character looked at her younger sister Gabrielle and the maid May. She realized that she could perfectly cope with updating her wardrobe on her own. A moment later, the magical whirlwind carried Hillis Inoaden in the right direction. Gabriel looks at the remains of the magical whirlwind, and deep down, he envies his older sister and her divine abilities. The action takes place in the Kikia estate. The princess is talking with her friend Axian Birgit. They discuss important matters and Violeta's visit to the Inoaden family home. The head of the Berger house asked his interlocutor when she was going to visit the Inoaden estate. But Violeta said that this question had been of interest to Axian too often lately. The princess added that her friend could also ask about other things, such as how Mago Kikia was feeling, or how the ball dedicated to Violeta's birthday had ended. Axion Berget replied that the internal affairs of the Kikia family were none of his business. The princess thought for a moment and said that she wanted to thank her interlocutor for the help he had provided in finding her missing brother. The young nobleman replied that Violeta should thank not him but Hillis Inoaden. It was she who returned Mago Kikia to his native estate. The princess said that it was true, but Axion Berger still tried to complete his task, so he deserved gratitude. Violeta also added that her younger brother had not yet come to his senses. He was sleeping and recovering his strength, which he had lost from the shock he had experienced. Suddenly, Princess Kalikia's mood changed dramatically. She felt a deep sense of hatred towards the people who had bullied her younger brother. This was expressed by the girl clutching her teacup tightly. Axion Berget noticed the change in his interlocutor's mood and asked what she had done with the people who had imprisoned Mago Kikia and wanted to profit from him. The girl thought for a second and answered her interlocutor that all those who had offended her younger brother had already gone to hell, where they belonged. The head of the Berget clan looked at his interlocutor carefully and said that beautiful women can be very cruel when someone insults them or their loved ones. Last night, Axion and Suleiman Berget made sure that punishment reached those who deserved it. The young nobleman added that he had destroyed all the precious stones he could find. He continues to track down and destroy those that were sold. The princess looked at her interlocutor carefully and said that she was very grateful to him for the excellent work done. With the help of Axion Birgit, all problems would be quickly solved. The girl also added that she would do everything to ensure that Mago Kikia felt happy in his native estate. After this, the princess looked closely at her interlocutor and confessed to him that she had only recently learned that this boy was her nephew, born to her exiled sister. Previously, Violeta thought that Mago Kikia was her younger brother, whom she had lost a long time ago. All this information, of course, is not very exciting for Axion Berget. Right now, he is more interested in another question. The young aristocrat again asked his interlocutor when she would go on a visit to the Inoaden estate. The princess still does not know what to answer the nobleman. She thought for a few seconds and nevertheless made a decision, which she told her interlocutor about. But first, Violeta decided to warn her friend. She strongly advised Axian Birgit to stay away from Hillis Inoeden. She could be very dangerous. The Summer Lady added that she was able to look at the main character with her magical vision, and she saw that something unknown and not very good was hidden in Hillis Inoeden. But the princess does not yet understand what it really is. Violeta thought for a moment and told Askion Birgit that she did not know how to explain all this. But contact with the heiress of the Inoeden family could turn into trouble for any person. The princess added that the head of the Berger house could ignore her advice, but he should not come to her later to complain about Hillis Inoeden. The young aristocrat did not answer and only grinned. After that, Axian Birgit said that Violeta only provoked him and made him even more interested in the heiress of the Inoeden family. Princess Kikia replied that she thought so. The proud young man would not listen to her and would do as he wished. Violeta thought about it and told her friend that she planned to visit the Inoeden estate tomorrow. Suddenly, the conversation of the aristocrats was interrupted by the valet, who burst into the office and announced that young Mago Kikia had just come to his senses. This news pleased Violeta. The girl thinks that she needs to immediately visit her unfortunate nephew, who woke up after a long and restless sleep. Axion Berger reacted to this news more reservedly. At this time, the young heir of the Kikia family begins to come to his senses. He still has poor vision after a long sleep. It seems to him that bandits have gathered around him, who want to wound him again and get new precious stones from his blood. But this is not so. The poor boy hid under the blanket. He did not want to suffer any more physical torture. The maids who looked after Mago Kikia decided to urgently call Violeta to calm her nephew. The princess did not hesitate and immediately came to the frightened boy, who was wrapped in a blanket and shaking from shock. The girl hurried to calm her nephew and said that there was no one and nothing to be afraid of here. Violeta introduced herself to the boy and said that she was his aunt. Mago Kikia had finally returned to his home, where he would be helped and cared for. For some reason, the unfortunate child trusted his new acquaintance. Mago Kikia came to his senses a little and remembered his savior who pulled him out of the hated prison. He wants to see Hillis Inoeden because only she was sincere and honest with him. The wish of the heir of the Kikia family greatly surprised and puzzled everyone who was present next to him. Lady Violeta did not expect such a development of events, but the rescued boy continues to cry and demands that Hillis Inoeden be brought to him immediately. Only with her will he feel completely safe. Lady Violeta realized that she needed to act urgently and sent a messenger to the Inoeden estate to invite the main character to her house. But the messenger returned empty-handed. Hillis Inoeden is not home now. She has disappeared somewhere. This news greatly upset the princess, who is trying to figure out what to do now and how to calm her frightened nephew. Suddenly, Terzo Kikia appeared in the corridor and said that the situation was becoming very difficult because the nephew was so scared that he did not want to see anyone except Hillis Inoeden. Lady Violeta was surprised to see her cousin in the corridor. She asked Terzo Kikia why he was there and what he wanted. The relative answered the princess that he wanted to support her in a difficult period of her life. He heard the news that Mago Kikia had come to his senses. That is why the cousin was at Violeta's estate. Terzo Kikia did not want to engage in a long and pointless argument with his cousin. He quickly opened the door to the boy's room and entered to sort out the situation. Mago Kikia is in his bed. He is still hiding under his blanket, scared, and will not let anyone near him. Terzo turns to the child and says that he can arrange a meeting with Hillis Inoeden, but now she can't come to the Kikia estate, so they need to find her together. Terzo asked if the boy wanted to go look for Hillis Inoeden with him immediately. The child liked the idea. Lady Violeta watches all this. She also likes her cousin's idea. But the girl is not sure whether her nephew will want to leave the safety of his bed now. Mago Kikia looks at his interlocutor carefully. The boy is very interested in who this person is and why he wants to help him now. The miraculous child has great magical powers, but for some reason he can't read the souls of this young aristocrat and the girl. They don't look like Hillis Inoeden. This frightens the boy a little. Lady Violeta pounced on her cousin with reproaches and accusations of excessive boldness. The girl cannot understand why Terzo behaves so insolently in the current situation. Terzo Kikia replied to his sister that he felt sorry for the frightened child. If Hillis Inoeden was not at home, then they needed to find her immediately and meet her on her territory to calm the boy down. The heiress of the House of Inoeden may not appear for a long time, so there is no time to waste. Otherwise, it could turn out badly for the frightened boy, who has already experienced too much for his young age. The princess listened carefully to her cousin, but she thought there was some trick and Terzo Kalikia had something in mind. The girl could not read his thoughts because he also possessed the eyes of truth, which allowed him to penetrate the minds of others and hide his intentions. This secret power has been passed down in the Kalikia family for a very long time, from generation to generation. It helps its owners to see the truth or lies in the words and thoughts of the person speaking. For a split second, the princess regretted that the members of the Kalisha family could not read each other's thoughts. This ability would be very useful to Lady Violeta now. The princess thought for a moment and realized that there was a grain of truth in her cousin's words. After that, Lady Violeta said that she would personally take her nephew to Hillis Inoaden. This did not please Terzo Kalikia. The young aristocrat does not understand how a fragile and weak girl will move through rough terrain with a boy in her arms. The princess did not lose her head in the current situation and said that Axian Berger would help her. For Terzo Kalikia, these words were a real blow. He had not expected such a turn of events. Had he really suffered a complete defeat and his secret plan would fail? The princess's cousin said that she trusted the head of the Berger clan too much and paid him too much attention. Jealousy awoke in Terzo Kalicia's soul. But Lady Violeta rejected all the accusations of her relative and said that the most important thing now was the boy's safety, which must be ensured at any cost. Terzo Kalikia was a little embarrassed by his cousin's words, but he had no choice but to agree to her proposal. Axian Berger came to Lady Violeta when Terzo called him. The young nobleman asked what he could do for the princess. Lady Violeta is thinking about how best to formulate her thoughts so as not to waste time on pointless arguments and conversations. She needs to act urgently. The princess is also embarrassed by the competition that is visible between Terzo Kalikia and Axian Berger. This is neither the time nor the place for stupid male games. The princess's cousin dislikes the head of the Berger family, but he understands that now he needs the help of a rival. It will be beneficial to everyone in the current situation. The wonderful boy continues to hide under his blanket and tremble with fear. He cannot understand why all these people who are around him have not yet brought him the savior Hillis Inoaden. Axian Berger looked at the boy carefully and began to guess what was happening to him now. The wonderful child trusted only his savior and now wanted to see only her. Finally, Lady Violeta broke the oppressive silence and told Lord Birgit that she wanted to take Mago Kalikia and her cousin to the Inoaden estate to meet Lady Hillis. Axian Berger agreed to go to the Inoaden estate with his friends. He turned to the wonderful boy and said that he would soon meet his savior and everything would be fine. Mago Kalikia looks closely at the head of the Berger family, whom he first saw when he was saved by Hillis Inoaden. The wonderful boy tries to scan the young aristocrat with his magic sight to see if he can be trusted. Axian Berger turned to the princess's nephew again and said that he understood his emotional state. The boy had a hard time trusting strangers after everything he had been through. But Mago Kalikia does not need to be afraid of his friends. Everyone who is around him now only wants to help him and return him to normal life. The boy listens attentively to Lord Birgit. The young aristocrat approached the wonderful child and swore on his name that as long as he was near the boy, nothing would threaten him and he would be completely safe. At that moment, Mago Kalikia's magical vision opened, with which he can look into the soul of any person. Now the boy is studying the thoughts of Lord Birgit. After a few moments, the wonderful child realized that Axian Berger could be trusted completely. He was now telling the truth to the boy. After that, Mago Kalikia extended his hands to the aristocrat as a sign of trust. Lady Violeta and her cousin were stunned to see that the beautiful boy believed Axian Berger's words and allowed him to pick him up. They hadn't expected such a turn of events. Now it would be possible to deliver Mago Kalikia to the right place without any problems. The Autumn Lord looked at the princess and her brother and told them to send a messenger to the Inoaden estate with the news that guests would soon be there. They had to leave right now. Time was of the essence. At this time, in the estate of the Montana family, which is a vassal of the great Kalicia family, an interesting conversation takes place between noble women. They discuss the recent events that took place at Lady Violeta's feast. Cordelia Montana supports her overlords, the Kalicians, and everything. The ladies present want to know more about the latest events and how this will affect the balance of power in the kingdom. After all, the Kalicians have now regained their magical powers. But Lady Montana said that she cannot reveal all the secrets of the line. The aristocrat apologized to her friends for her forced secrecy and said that the official presentation of the heir of the Kikia family was to take place soon. The girls are not offended by Cordelia Montana and have hastened to assure her of their affection and friendship. They only regret that they will not learn all the details of these mysterious events, which everyone in the kingdom is now talking about. Suddenly, Hiliona Ameli, from the clan that serves the Farvanon family, spoke up. The blonde aristocrat said that she was more interested in Hillis Inoaden. This is a very interesting person who played a huge role in this story. Hiliona Amelie told her friends that she had recently sent Lady Inoaden an invitation to tea, but had never received a response. This was very sad for a girl who had expected to learn something new. A friend asked Lady Hiliona if she had written a letter to Gabrielle Inoaden. Perhaps she knew something and could reveal new details about the recent mysterious events. Hiliona Amelie replied that she had sent a message to Gabrielle. But now her position has become very precarious and uncertain. Therefore, the girl is keeping silent for now, so as not to incur the wrath of her older sister, who has become the head of the Inoaden family. The noblewoman also added that Gabrielle is not related by blood to any great aristocratic family. Previously, the entire life of the Inoaden estate revolved around this girl. But to be honest, Gabrielle is a very selfish child who is spoiled by her father and brother. Lady Hiliona smiled and said that she had never paid attention to Hillis Inoaden before. But it turned out that she had discovered the sacred power of spring within herself. This was a great surprise to everyone. The noblewoman thought for a moment and said that she would remember for the rest of her life the performance that Lady Hillis had given at the Kikia family's festive ball. It was an incredible spectacle. Suddenly, something strange happened. The girls continued to calmly communicate and discuss the latest news. But at this time, a loud noise was heard from Lady Montana's dressing room, and a strong wind blew. Cordelia Montana rushed to her dressing room to check what was making such a loud noise and where the bone-chilling draft was coming from. The brave noblewoman was also followed by her friends, with whom she had just spoken. These girls cannot overcome their curiosity, sacrificing their safety in the face of a potential threat. Cordelia Montana ran into her dressing room and froze in surprise. She saw Hillis Inoaden there. The girl did not expect such a turn of events. Lady Montana was very surprised by such an incredible surprise. She looked closely at her unexpected guest and asked if it was she and how she ended up here. The same question was asked to Hillis Inoaden by the surprised dressmaker who works in the dressing room and creates beautiful outfits not only for Cordelia Montana, but for all the famous beauties of the kingdom. The main character smiled at the dressmaker and apologized for the unsuccessful landing. She had planned to land outside the sewing shop, but failed. The girl promised to compensate for the damage she had caused. The dressmaker listened attentively to her unexpected guest and said that she was not offended by her. Hillis Inoaden asked the girl to choose a suitable outfit for her, but the best thing would be if the stylist sewed all the dresses that are in her catalog and sent them by mail to the Inoaden estate. This would be the right decision for the main character. The aristocrats standing nearby and listening to Hillis Inoaden's conversation with the dressmaker are delighted that the girl has decided to order all the outfits that are in the atelier's catalog. Now the noblewomen will have something to gossip about in their spare time. The main character thought for a moment and said that the bill for the work done should also be sent to the Inoaden family. In addition, the girl asked that the dress she brought with her be adjusted to her size by tomorrow morning. Hillis Inoaden was about to leave, but said that the dressmaker could include compensation for the damages in her bill. The girl did not want to do this, but that's how it happened. The dressmaker listened attentively to her client and said that she would do everything exactly as she had ordered. After that, she bowed to Lady Hillis, who was already heading towards the exit of the dressing room. The aristocrats watched the main character and looked at each other in surprise. Lady Bustina said that she simply could not recognize Hillis Inoaden in this proud and formidable girl. She had changed a lot lately, as if she had been reborn as a different person. Cordelia Montana interrupted her friend's conversation and said that she felt an incomparable aroma that emanated from Lady Hillis. The smell of rose petals intoxicates the aristocrat, and she likes it very much. Meanwhile, the main character has moved to the king's palace thanks to her magical abilities. In this place, Hillis Inoaden has another important matter. There are 4 great aristocratic families in the kingdom which have 52 noble families under their control. But all the great families are ruled by a powerful king. Such was the political situation in this glorious state. All the subjects considered their mighty king to be half god. But one day, the ruler of the kingdom died of a mysterious cause, and his magnificent palace was empty for many years. Now, Hillis Inoaden has come here to make her goals a reality. The main character walks along the corridor of the royal castle and thinks about how it is perfectly preserved thanks to the support of the forces of the four elements. This palace consists of 99 doors that are connected to other spaces. Those from great families can use these portals for their own purposes. The girl continues on her way and thinks that behind the 44th door there is a portal to an impregnable underground dungeon in which she was kept during her previous incarnations. And behind the last door, which will be the 99th in a row, there is a mysterious special space. This is the sanctuary, which only the head of his great family can enter. This sacred place is called the Forest of Four Seasons. After a long journey through the royal castle, Hillis Inoaden finally arrived here to implement her plan. The main character approached the gates that lead to the Forest of Four Seasons. She tried to open them, but she failed. The girl guessed that she would need something else to enter the special portal. Hillis Inoaden now knows that she needs more than just the mark of her family's head to open the magic doors. She also can't call on the other heads of the great families for help, so the main character will improvise. She put her hand in her pocket to take out the gem generated by Mago Kikia. The Lady of the Sacred Power of Spring placed the precious ruby near the magic gate to see what effect it would have. After that, the main character began to cast a spell to use the power of the magic ruby. The girl froze in anticipation of what might happen now, but for now, she was disappointed. Hillis Inoaden looks at the magic ruby and still cannot understand whether it was able to help her. She must wait a little longer. Several agonizing minutes passed, and the magical ruby, born from the heir of the Kikia family, evaporated into the air, leaving behind only a thin stream of red smoke. The main character looked at what had happened and realized that the magic stone had not helped her. At this point, the girl's plan had failed. She needed to find another way to open the gates to the Forest of the Four Elements. Hillis Inoaden remembered the heir of the House of Kikia, whom she had saved only to help her open the treasured gate to a special portal. She wanted to take the wonderful boy with her, but so far she had not succeeded. Suddenly, Lord Farvanon appeared at the gate to the Four Elements Forest. He did not expect to see the heiress of the Inoaden family here. This greatly surprised the young nobleman. The Winter Lord looked at Hillis Inoaden with confusion. He could not understand what this girl was doing in such a sacred place that had not been visited by people for a long time. The aristocrat approached the main character and said that today, only representatives of noble families who obey the House of Farvanon would be gathering in the royal palace. He did not know that members of other families would be at the meeting. After that, the Winter Lord carefully examined the girl from head to toe and expressed his dissatisfaction with Hillis Inoaden's outfit. At such important events, aristocrats should not come in nightgowns, but in luxurious dresses that correspond to their rank and position in society. When Lord Farvanon's displeasure softened, he took off his cloak and said that it was a little chilly outside, so Hillis Inoaden should put something on her shoulders to keep her warm. The Winter Lord wrapped his interlocutor in his cloak and smiled sweetly at her. Apparently, this lady's man continues to seek the favor of the ruler of the sacred power of spring. The young aristocrat smiled mysteriously again and said that the girl's hair had become darker lately. It suited her very well. The main character did not appreciate such a banal compliment. Hillis Inoaden looked indifferently into the eyes of her interlocutor and made such a bored face that the Winter Lord became a little embarrassed and stopped showering the girl with compliments. After this, the main character, with a quick and deft movement of her hand, threw the Winter Lord's cloak off her shoulders and told him not to waste his energy and time on useless courtship of her. Hillis Inoaden looked Christian Farvanon in the eye and said that she would never marry him. Let the young nobleman find another object of adoration. Such frankness plunged the Winter Lord into a state of shock. He is silent and does not know what to answer the girl. At this moment, the main character remembered that during her second incarnation, she chose Christian Farvanon as her lover. But it all ended sadly for the girl. That time, the Winter Lord managed to persuade Hillis Inoaden to go with him to his family estate for permanent residence. The main character was initially very happy about these changes, which, as it seemed to her, would only be for the better. The move happened very quickly, and the girl did not have time to discuss it with her father. But Christian Farvanon hastened to reassure his new bride. He said that he had settled everything with Diego Inoaden, and he was not against the move of his eldest daughter. The girl thanked her beloved for his concern for her. Christian Farvanon is very happy that he was able to make his bride happy and promised her that their wedding will take place soon. This will forever seal their union. When Hillis Inoaden lived in the Winter Lord's estate, he took care of her and gave her various gifts. It was a wonderful time in the life of the main character. For the first time in her life, the girl truly loved someone and began to trust this person, relying on him completely. Christian Farvanon immediately understood this and did not fail to take advantage of it. The Winter Lord and the Spring Lady have a beautiful romantic relationship that you can only read about in romance novels. Such love cannot last forever, because that is how this world works. But the main character gave herself completely to this love and was happy. She did not pay attention to the opinions of others and enjoyed every moment spent next to the Winter Lord. But the hour of reckoning for carelessness came one day. Christian Farvanon returned to his estate after a hard day. Hillis Inoaden greeted him joyfully and hurried to embrace him. But something was not as usual. The young aristocrat gave off a chill. The Winter Lord did not like that his bride wanted to hug him. He gently pushed her hand away and said that he was very tired today and wanted to go to his room to rest after a hard day. The main character did not expect such a turn of events. She stares at her fiancé and does not know what to say to him. The girl is very disappointed with such behavior of the Winter Lord, but Christian Farvanon was not at a loss in the difficult situation. He smiled sweetly at his fiancée and said that he would be happy to spend time with her next time. But now he was simply exhausted. After these words, the cunning aristocrat headed to his room to get rid of the company of the girl who was beginning to bore him. Hillis Inoaden remained standing in the corridor at a loss. The girl began to notice lately that her fiancé began to avoid her and treat her coldly. Perhaps he is too tired from work, or the Winter Lord began to get tired of the bride's annoying behavior. The main character went to her chambers, but she could not sleep. So Hillis Inoaden decided to walk along the night corridors of the Farvanon estate, which were filled with silvery moonlight. Hillis Inoaden approached the Winter Lord's chambers and saw that the light was on and familiar voices were coming from there. The girl was surprised by the fact that her fiancé was not sleeping at such a late hour. After all, he had said he was very tired today. The main character decided to look into the half-open door of her lover's chambers to see what he was doing, but it would have been better if she hadn't done it. The girl saw Christian Farvanon talking to his assistant, whose name was Renok. The Winter Lord told his servant that he was tired of the stupidity and dog-like devotion of his bride. She was even worse than her sister Gabrielle. The assistant answered his master that Hillis Inoaden was a kind and simple girl and should not be offended. Christian Farvanon said that he could no longer tolerate the spontaneity and naivety of his fiancée. It was costing him too much effort. The servant Renok replied that it was impossible to reason like that. The Winter Lord pays no attention to his assistant's advice. He says that he wants a child to be born who will combine the magical powers of both great families. After that, he will definitely get rid of the girl, who has become very boring to him. Hillis Inoaden spies and eavesdrops on the conversation of two young people. She does not believe that all this is true. Could it be that Christian Farvanon has been deceiving the main character all this time and pursuing his own selfish goals? It turns out that he only needs her for the miraculous offspring. When the Winter Lord cynically said that he really didn't like the appearance and face of his bride, the girl couldn't stand it and decided to enter her fiancé's room to clarify the situation. Hillis Inoaden is in a state of deep shock. She herself does not realize what she is doing now. Everything happens automatically. The girl's face expresses fear, anger, and confusion at the same time. The main character looks intently at her fiancé, whom she loves madly. But just now, this man betrayed her and hurt her very much. The girl does not know what to say to him. The bitterness of resentment has closed her lips, but the Winter Lord was not at a loss again. He had already gotten used to putting on his mask of love and good nature in the presence of his bride. The cunning aristocrat smiled sweetly at the girl and asked her why she had decided to take a walk at such a late hour. Christian Farvanon decided to pretend to care for Hillis Inoaden and offered her to wear his cape, which would keep her warm in the cool time of day. After all, the girl is dressed too lightly and can catch a cold. The Winter Lord approached his bride and placed his cloak over her shoulders. This way, he wanted to soften the situation and distract Hillis Inoaden from unpleasant thoughts. Perhaps she heard what he was just telling his assistant. He needed to come up with a good excuse so that the naive girl would believe him. The cunning nobleman noticed that Hillis Inoaden was shivering violently. He asked the girl if she was really that cold. Perhaps she should return to her bed and cover herself with a warm blanket. At that moment, Christian Farvanon finally realized that his bride had heard the conversation with the assistant and now knew the whole truth. The Winter Lord immediately changed and showed his true form. Hillis Inoaden was very scared and immediately began to justify herself. The girl nervously shook her head and said that she had not heard anything from the conversation that had just taken place. But the cunning and sly nobleman does not believe his bride. He told the girl that he left the door open on purpose so that she would finally learn the truth. The Winter Lord can no longer hide from Hillis Inoaden. It destroys him from within. The main character listens attentively to her fiancé and does not believe her ears. It is just some kind of horror. The girl could not stand the emotional tension and began to cry. Christian Farvanon said that he always hated her tears. But Hillis Inoaden loves her fiancé so much that she cannot believe these terrible words. She refuses to accept the terrible reality. Christian Farvanon continues to mock the unfortunate girl. He said that she is so pathetic and insignificant that she continues to love him even after she learned the whole truth. This is simply ridiculous, in the opinion of the treacherous nobleman. Hillis Inoaden tries to answer her lover, but she can't. Tears choke the confused and frightened girl. The words freeze on her wet lips. The Winter Lord said that Hillis Inoaden was a naive fool who longed for pure love, but would receive only illusions and broken dreams instead. After that, the wily nobleman approached the bride and kissed her passionately. This is where the main character's memories of one of her previous incarnations ended. Hillis Inoaden is now in the royal palace. Christian Inoaden stands before her. The girl once again told this treacherous aristocrat with special pleasure that she would never marry him. The heroine's heart is full of determination and courage. After experiencing 7 reincarnations and deaths, Hillis Inoaden knows what to do and how to communicate with the people around her. The cunning nobleman was not at all embarrassed by the heroine's decisive refusal. He smiled sweetly again and said that he did not expect such a development of events. The Winter Lord looked dreamily at the magical gate that leads to the forest of the 4 elements. He paused for a moment to hide his true emotions and said that he really liked Hillis Inoaden as a girl. But the main character is no longer the naive simpleton she was in the past. She looked sternly at her interlocutor and said that she hated him with all her heart. Christian Farvanon listened carefully to Hillis Inoaden and said that he did not believe her words. He believed that he had done nothing to the girl for which he could be hated so much. The main character answered the Winter Lord that not long ago she was ready to go with him to the ends of the earth. But now she has cleansed her soul of useless and bad illusions. After these words, Hillis Inoaden was engulfed in a magical whirlwind and instantly dissolved into space, leaving Christian Farvanon alone with his thoughts. The girl only managed to say a contemptuous farewell to the insidious aristocrat, and only the crumpled cloak of the Winter Lord remains lying in the place where the mistress of the sacred power of spring had just been. Next to the cloak, several pink petals are flying in the air. The main character again remembers her previous incarnation, when she lived in the estate of Lord Farvanon. At first, the girl was happy and could not recognize the sweet lies. But then everything changed. Hillis Inoaden dined in the dining room the next morning after the night incident in the Winter Lord's room. Christian Farvanono has no appetite at all. He looks at his fiancée and does not understand why she continues to love him. He wants the girl to get angry with him and slap him. But this does not happen. All this is very boring for a passionate young man. The Winter Lord can't understand why Hillis Inoaden is such a pathetic and naive girl. He just can't get the idea that the main character has a pure and kind soul. After the fateful night, Hillis Inoaden's life in the Farvanon estate has changed completely. The Winter Lord does not hide that he does not love the girl, but he wants to let her go. Therefore, the main character feels like a toy locked in a golden cage. But despite the bitter truth, the naive and kind girl continues to believe that Christian Farvanon will be able to truly love her, and everything will be as before. So 6 months passed. One day, a servant came to the main character and said that Ricardo Inoaden had sent her a note that needed to be delivered personally to Lady Hillis. This circumstance surprised the main character very much, because her brother had never sent her any messages before. It seemed that her relatives had forgotten about the existence of Hillis Inoaden. Furthermore, the Winter Lord had completely restricted his bride's communication with the outside world. Ricardo Inoaden must have had to bribe a messenger to deliver a letter to his sister. The main character opened the letter from her brother and read it. The girl was very surprised by the contents of this unexpected message. Ricardo Inoaden told his sister that all her relatives missed her and were ready to accept her back into the family at any moment. Hillis Inoaden burst into tears when she read Ricardo's message. At that moment, the girl felt a strong sense of how much she missed all the members of her family, whom she had not seen for a long time. The maid, who was bribed by Ricardo Inoaden, said that the lady only needed to say one word, and she would help her leave the Farvanon estate and return home. The girl did not think long about this question. She resolutely declared that she wanted to go to her native estate today. And let it be what it will be. She could no longer endure the torment in the cold and joyless house of Farvanon. The main character followed the bribed maid and carried out all the instructions of Ricardo Inoaden to get out of the Farvanon estate. After that, the girl got into a pre-prepared carriage and headed to her native estate. Finally, Hillis Inoaden can breathe a sigh of relief. The girl is in a relatively safe carriage that will soon take her to her home, which she missed so much. The main character is a little worried and thinks about what awaits her at home. Will her relatives scold her for her rash step? But there is no point in thinking about it now. Everything will be fine. Suddenly, the main character noticed that her carriage was being followed by the Winter Lord's assistant, whose name was Ranok. He demanded that Hillis Inoaden immediately stop her carriage and stay where she was. The girl did not do anything. In this situation, she could only rely on the will of her fate. She covered her ears with her hands and tried to convince herself that everything would be fine, but something unexpected happened. The main character suddenly heard the evil roar of a demonic beast, which she had already met once. This scared the girl very much. Hillis Inoaden realized that the sounds of pursuit attracted the demonic beasts that lived in this mysterious forest. The girl did not know what to do in this situation. She tried to bend down to avoid the predator's attack. The main character started to panic. Suddenly, she used her magic power to protect herself. But something went wrong. The girl was in a lot of pain. After a failed attempt at witchcraft, Hillis Inoaden finds herself on the floor of a carriage among thorny vines. The girl has lost all her strength. She is bleeding and feels like she is dying. Near the powerless and motionless Lady Inoaden, demonic beasts prowl, thirsting for her flesh. For now, they are held back by impenetrable thorny vines. But this will not last long. Suddenly, the main character heard familiar steps. Someone was approaching her. The girl was glad that she was not alone in this dark forest surrounded by bloodthirsty predators. It turned out that Hillis Inoaden had heard the Winter Lord's footsteps as he pursued her. Christian Farvanon approached the carriage that had crashed. The main character's groom grabbed the carriage door handle to open it and get to his bride, who was left inside the broken carriage and needed urgent help. The Winter Lord opened the damaged door with great difficulty and grabbed his bride by her bloody hand. The girl was already showing almost no signs of life. The last of her life force had left her. An angry and disheartened Christian Farvanon tried to say something to Hillis Inoaden, but it was too late. The exhausted and mortally wounded girl could no longer hear him. This was the second death of the main character during her previous incarnation. Hillis Inoaden remembered this priceless experience well, which knowledge of Christian Farvanon's true form gave her. The action takes place again in the royal castle. The Winter Lord stands alone near the gate that leads to the Forest of the Four Elements. He holds in his hand his white cloak, which was just disdained by Hillis Inoaden. Christian Farvanon thinks that usually similar situations make him very angry. But now, for some reason, he does not want to be angry at the mistress of the sacred force of spring. The young aristocrat remembered that the main character told him about her hatred towards him. This made the Winter Lord just grin. He decided to continue the battle for the girl's heart and do everything to please her. Suddenly, a strange feeling came over Christian Farvanon. The young aristocrat thought that someone was watching him, and he turned around to find out if this was really the case. The Winter Lord looked carefully at the magical gates to the special portal, but saw no one near him. Perhaps the young nobleman's wild imagination was running wild. After visiting the royal palace and meeting Christian Farvanon, the main character returned to her family estate. The girl was met by her maid May, who informed her mistress that important guests had arrived. Hillis Inoaden was very surprised by this news because she had not made any appointments with anyone. especially since the main character's head is currently occupied with completely different thoughts. The girl immediately went to the living room to receive the important guests and find out for what purpose they came to the Inoaden estate. When the main character entered the guest room, she saw Violeta Kikia. This puzzled the head of the Hillis family a little, but she did not show it. The princess smiled warmly at the hostess of the house and greeted her. As Hillis Inoaden glanced around, she noticed that there were other guests in the drawing room. Lady Kikia apologized for the tactless intrusion and said that urgent business had brought her there. Terzo Kikia hastened to introduce himself to the main character and expressed his regret that he had not had the opportunity to meet Hillis Inoaden earlier. The main character also noticed that Axian was present. He was holding the wonderful boy that Hillis Inoaden had saved yesterday. All this seemed very strange to the girl. Suddenly, Mago Kikia let out a loud cry and quickly walked towards the main character to hug her. The wonderful boy wants Hillis Inoaden to take him in her arms. This puzzled the girl a little. The main character hugged the magical boy and asked the guests why they had all gathered there. Lady Violeta hastened to inform that she had sent a letter to Hillis Inoaden warning of the upcoming visit, but circumstances had changed abruptly. The visit had to be accelerated in order to calm Mago Kikia. The head of the house, Inoaden, said that everything was clear to her now. Lady Violet could continue the conversation. Hillis Inoaden would try to help her solve her problems. This formulation of the question puzzled the princess and her cousin a little. They still thought that the head of the Inoaden house was the father of the main character. Axian wasn't too surprised by Hillis Inoaden's rapid rise. He'd faced her before and knew what she was capable of. The main character sat down in a comfortable chair because it was hard for her to hold Lady Violeta's nephew in her arms. She asked Axian why he had come to visit. The aristocrat replied that he had business here too. The head of the Berger family smiled mysteriously and added that Hillis Inoaden had promised him during their previous meeting to greet him as befits a true aristocrat. So, he had come here so that the girl could fulfill her promise. Now, Hillis Inoaden understood everything. She said that she accepted Lady Violet's apology and sympathized with her difficult situation. Terzo Kikia asked the main character to calm the wonderful boy down, because at the moment he could only trust her. The girl agreed to help in this matter. But before the main character got down to business, she was lost for a few moments in memories of the history of the Kikia family. 11 years ago, Lady Violeta's older sister, Rosania Kikia, was engaged to her cousin Terzo, but it was a forced engagement. Rosania Kikia did not agree with the decision of the elders of the clan, and for this she was expelled from her family. After which, the girl disappeared without a trace. It was only known that in exile she gave birth to a son named Mago. Years passed. Mago Kikia was found and returned to his family thanks to Hillis Inoaden. And now Lady Violeta stands before the wonderful boy and tries to calm him down, showing him a medallion with a portrait of his mother. The princess showed Mago Kikia a portrait of his mother and said that she was her younger sister. Lady Violeta also asked the wonderful boy if he remembered his mother. But the child answered that he did not remember his mother and did not recognize her in the portrait. Then Terzo Kikia asked the boy if he remembered the name of the woman who had given him life. The child replied that he did not remember that either. This greatly puzzled all those present in the living room. Lady Violeta was the first to come to her senses and decided not to escalate the situation. She wants her nephew to calm down, and then it will be easier to communicate with him. The aunt gently took her nephew's hands and said that he had nothing to fear anymore. Now Lady Violeta would protect Mago Kikia as well as his mother. The princess added that she would never harm her nephew for anything in the world and would hate those bad people who would even dare to think about it. Lady Violeta looked intently into the eyes of the wonderful boy and said that from now on, the Kikia estate would treat him with awe and respect. And if the nephew got into trouble, he could always turn to his aunt for help. The confused boy looks at his relative and does not know what to answer her. Something deep in his soul tells him that this woman can be trusted. Suddenly, Mago Kikia asked his savior if she remembered the promise she had made to him when they were in prison. The main character looked at the wonderful boy with bewilderment and said that she remembered the promise she had given. Mago Kikia was so humiliated, insulted, and also exhausted that he asked to kill him. Hillis Inoaden stroked her companion's blonde hair and said that he should not rush to die. First, he should live in a luxurious estate with his relatives and enjoy all the gifts of life. If the boy does not like such a life, then the main character will fulfill her promise and kill him. Mago Kalikia thought for a few moments and said that he could not understand anything yet, and saw strange things that confused him. The wonderful boy feels that at this moment only Hillis Inoaden can understand him. No one else is able to reach the heart of the heir of the Kalikia family. The main character knows that Mago Kalikia has the eyes of truth, so his words carry weight. The girl looked at her protege carefully and said that perhaps he is right in the current situation. The wonderful child smiled in response to Hillis Inoaden's words. He trusts the main character and will try not to disappoint her, listening to her advice. Mago Kalikia was a little moved and began to cry with joy. A large, sparkling tear ran down his cheek, which was to turn into a precious stone. Lady Violeta noticed this large tear on her nephew's cheek and froze in anticipation. She wants to see if it can turn into a magical artifact that amplifies sacred energy. Terzo Kalikia also watches the wonderful boy and his tear closely. He wants to make sure that his nephew has divine powers and can generate precious stones. A few seconds later, Mago Kalikia's magical tear fell onto the living room floor and turned into a magical artifact that many people would pay a lot of money for. Axian Berget noticed the fallen precious artifact, bent down and picked it up from the floor to take a closer look and make sure it was real. After this, the head of the Berget house turned to Hillis Inoaden and asked her to tell him how she knew where exactly the wonderful boy was imprisoned. The young aristocrat had come here to answer this question. The main character looked at Axian Berget carefully and wondered why he was asking such questions. The girl was not yet sure whether she could trust this aristocrat with whom she had recently competed for the possession of a wonderful boy. Axian Berget continues to insist on his own. He wants to know all the details of the recent incident that took place between him and Hillis Inoaden in the underground prison. Apparently, this is very important to the aristocrat. The main character studies the facial features of the head of the Bergets. She does not feel hatred towards this man. She even likes him a little. But this impression can be deceptive. She needs to take a closer look at this man. Lady Violet said she, too, was curious as to how Hillis Inoaden knew where her nephew was. It was not easy to obtain information. The princess added that she and her friend Lord Berget had a lot of trouble finding the wonderful boy. The aristocrat wants to understand how Hillis Inoaden was able to do the same, but in a different way. The main character understands that there is no point in deceiving people who have the eyes of truth and will immediately expose her lies. The girl thought for a while and said that she learned about the existence of Mago Kalikia completely by accident. Terzo Kalikia decided to intervene in the conversation and asked if there were other precious artifacts born from the miraculous boy in the palace of the Inoaden family. This is very important to know, because the Kalikia family is searching for these jewels throughout the kingdom to return them to themselves. Lady Violeta is also interested in this matter, but she fears that excessive persistence may anger Hillis Inoaden, and she will refuse to help her guests. The main character looked at everyone present and said that there were no more magical artifacts generated by Mago Kalikia in the Inoaden family estate. Therefore, his family members can be absolutely calm about this. Lady Violeta looked at Hillis Inoaden with the eyes of truth and realized that she was telling the truth. After that, the princess turned to Axian Berget and asked him for the precious tear he had just picked up from the living room floor. The princess took the precious artifact called Gemma and began to examine it carefully. She said that this was the first time she saw a Gemma that could be born from tears of great joy. Lady Violeta also added that in the Kalikia family, good deeds are never forgotten, and they must be rewarded according to their merits, as well as evil deeds. Everyone will get what they deserve in the end. After these words, the princess tightly clutched in her hand the gems that were made from her nephew's tears, and said that it was only thanks to Hillis Inoaden that the Kalisha family had regained what belonged only to them. Lady Violeta paused for a moment to collect her thoughts and expressed her deep gratitude to Hillis Inoaden for her help. The princess added that she wanted to do something for the main character so as not to remain in debt. The head of the Inoaden family had long been planning to ask Lady Kalikia for a favor, so she did not hesitate and said that she had a request for the princess. Hillis Inoaden thought for a moment and added that she wanted to ask the head of the Kalikia family to visit the legendary Forest of the Four Seasons with her. Lady Violeta asked her interlocutor again and clarified whether she had heard her correctly, but the main character confirmed her intention to visit the Forest of Four Seasons. Hillis Inoaden added that if the head of the Kalikia house gave his consent, she would go to the Forest of the Four Seasons with him. It would be an interesting and important journey in all respects, which would only benefit everyone. The desire to go to a legendary place that only a select few can visit surprised everyone in the living room. Lady Violeta and her cousin began to guess what Hillis Inoaden had in mind. Axian Berget also began to understand what the main character's plan was. He said that it seemed like everyone present would soon have to celebrate a new significant date on the calendar. The princess thought about Hillis Inoaden's request. She said that everything was clear to her now, but that it all needed to be carefully considered so as not to make any mistakes. The princess pretended to want to help the main character. She said that she would personally talk to the head of her family. Most likely, he would give a positive answer. But recently, the head of the Kikia family has been very ill, so there may be some difficulties. Time will tell. Hillis Inoaden realized that Lady Violeta had refused her in a veiled, soft way. The girl did not show that she understood. She said that she did not want the head of the Kikia family to suffer because of her. Axian Berget intervened in the conversation. He told the main character that he could replace the head of the Kikia clan with himself if this option was suitable. Hillis Inoaden did not expect such a development. Axian Berget looked at the main character carefully and smiled mysteriously. This aristocrat is not as simple as he might seem at first glance. He said that with his help, the girl would find herself in the forest of the four elements much faster. The head of the Berget family extended his hand in friendship and said that he would like to contribute to the common cause and thank the main character instead of the Kikia family. Hillis Inoaden thought for a few moments. The girl looks at Axian Berget carefully and tries to understand his true intentions. He still does not know whether to trust this man. The main character did not expect such a turn of events. She is very puzzled and needs some time to understand how best to act in this situation. At this point, the conversation was over, and the guests went home. After the reception, the main character met her sister Gabrielle as she was walking down the hallway of the estate. The girl, as always, was in a joyful mood and was currying favor with Hillis Inoaden. Gabrielle pesters her older sister with annoying questions. She wants to know why the guests came and what they wanted to discuss during their visit. The main character ignores the annoying girl. At the moment, Hillis Inoaden has more important things to think about. She is trying to put all the known facts together and understand the purpose of Axian Berget's visit. Gabrielle continues to harass her sister. She said that every time she sees Axian Berget, she gets a shiver. He has an aura that is too cold. Hillis Inoaden continues to ignore Gabrielle. She doesn't care about her. The girl asks her maid May what Diego Inoaden is doing now. The maid replied to her mistress that the father of the family spends all his time in bed. He does not want to see anyone and does not talk to anyone after the incident that happened in the dining room. The main character asked the maid what her older brother Ricardo was doing. But the annoying Gabrielle intervened in the conversation and said that her brother was currently in his office and doing business. Gabrielle really wants to win her older sister's favor, but so far she hasn't been very successful. But the girl continues her attempts. She said that Ricardo has hardly left his office lately. Hillis Inoaden continues to ignore Gabrielle's antics. She turns to her maid, May, and asks her to send letters to the four great families. This surprises the maid, but the main character hurried to explain her plan. She said that now it was time to officially announce to all the great families that the Inoaden clan now had a new leader. After these words, Hillis Inoaden once again plunged into her memories from previous reincarnations. She remembered herself as a 12-year-old girl who secretly watched the guests who had arrived for a luxurious celebration. Axian Berget, who was 15 years old at the time, was also invited to the ball. This young man had already managed to discover the sacred power of autumn and became the head of his family, despite his youth. The main character secretly watches this young aristocrat. Hillis Inoaden noticed that this boy behaved like an adult. He was reserved, focused, and silent. The girl liked it. Suddenly, Axian Berget looked at the female lead. She was a little confused because she felt the coldness of the boy's piercing gaze, which sent shivers down her spine. The boys met with their eyes, and this greatly frightened the girl, who was not used to this. Hillis Inoaden is a very gentle and sensitive child, so the cold gaze of the head of the Berget clan penetrated into the very depths of her fragile soul. This was the first meeting of the main character with Axian Berget, which she will never forget. Even after 7 reincarnations, Hillis Inoaden sometimes recalls this meeting. It was the morning of the day after Princess Kalikia's visit to the heroine's estate. Axian Berget had already arrived at the royal palace to fulfill his agreement with Lady Hillis, who was already waiting for him there. The head of the Berger house greeted the mistress of the Innoaden family kindly and said that he had just arrived and was ready to get down to business immediately. The main character was surprised by such efficiency of the young aristocrat. Hillis Innoaden looks carefully at the noble lord who stands on the dais and understands that he is one of those people who always keep their word. Suddenly, the main character remembered her previous incarnation. That time, everything was completely the opposite, and not like now. On the dais stood Hillis Innoaden, who defeated the powerful aristocrat Axian Burgett. Then the main character showed all her power and entered into a fight with the head of the Burdett family. It was a critical moment that ended with the complete victory of Hillis Innoaden. Axian Burgett looked at the female lead who was thinking about her past. He said that he could smell the wonderful scent that was coming from the girl again. Hillis Innoaden looked at her interlocutor with a puzzled expression. She was pleased that the noble aristocrat liked the scent that her flower magic, infused with the energy of spring, generated. But this fact puzzled the girl a little, because she had already gotten used to the smell of roses that accompanies her. But the people around her can react to it differently and be quite sensitive to it. Hillis Innoaden sniffed and asked her companion what was wrong with her scent. Axion Berger replied that the girl's scent was very pleasant, but it was too strong. It could interfere with the journey to the forest of the four elements. The young aristocrat added that perhaps there should be some way to reduce the smell to avoid potential dangers that might arise along the way. But if there are difficulties with this, then the noble head of the Burgett family will try to simply get used to the rich rose aroma, so as not to pay any attention to it. The aristocrats headed towards the magical portal that leads to the forest of the four elements. Axion Berger congratulated Hillis Innoaden on officially taking over as the head of his family. The girl thanked the young man and said that she appreciated his help in the important matter ahead today. The head of the Bergett house smiled politely at the girl when he heard these words and said that his position would be completely different if there was someone else in Hillis Innoaden's place. The main character liked this. Lady Hillis asked her interlocutor what he wanted to check when he arrived at her estate with Princess Kikia. Axion Bergett replied that he would tell her about it another time. When the companions arrived at the magical gates that lead to the forest of the four elements, the head of the Berger clan extended his hand to his companion and told her to give him her palm. The main character is a little confused. The girl does not understand why Axion Bergett needs her hand. Maybe he has something bad in mind. This needs to be clarified. The noble aristocrat noticed Hillis Innoaden's confusion and hastened to reassure her. In order to pass through the magic gate, physical contact between the companions is mandatory. The main character believed her companion and extended her hand to him in order to successfully pass the magical barrier and get into the forest of the four elements. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Christian Farvanon appeared near the magic gates leading to a special portal, accompanied by his assistant. This greatly surprised the main character. Hillis Innoaden looks at the uninvited guests carefully and expects some dirty trick or something worse from them. This needs to be dealt with immediately. It seems that Christian Farvanon himself did not expect to meet the main character and her companion at the magical portal that leads to the forest of the four elements. Therefore, the Winter Lord was also very surprised when he saw representatives of the two great families together. Axion Bergett and his companion hold hands and watch the intruders carefully. The Winter Lord has come here for a specific purpose, and this must be verified and clarified. Christian Farvanon stares at Lady Hillis and Lord Axian. He decides to ask them what they are doing here together and why they are holding hands. It all looks very strange from the outside. The proud and independent aristocrats have no desire to answer the intruders' questions. They both dislike the Winter Lord, but that is not their main concern right now. The companions need to finish what they started. The young people clasped their hands even tighter and waited for what might happen now. Maybe the magic portal would open this very second, and they would be able to overcome the barrier on the way to the forest of the four elements. Axion Bergett looked at his companion carefully, ignoring the Winter Lord, and smiled at her. He said that if the girl was ready, they could pass through the magical gate right now. The Autumn Lord added that when leaving the four elements forest, they would need to hold hands again. But the main character didn't think about that. But about the fact that Axion Bergett and the Winter Lord, it turns out, don't get along with each other either. It's clearly visible now. But all this is unimportant now. It is necessary to pass through the magic portal and complete the undertaking. The companions clasped their hands tightly and headed towards the magic gate. A few seconds later, the young aristocrats disappeared behind the gate, which immediately closed behind them. The main character's goal was achieved. She overcame the magical barrier and entered the forest of the four elements. Christian Farvanon and his assistant Renok watch the nobles leave in confusion as they head into the forest of the four elements. The Winter Lord tries to understand what this all means and what it means for him. Perhaps everything that is happening now is only for the best. Christian Farvanon smiled mysteriously and loudly expressed his emotions. Certainly the Winter Lord is pleased with what he has just seen. Hillis Inoaden and Axian Berget continue their journey, holding hands tightly. The protagonist remembers what the Autumn Lord warned her about. The head of the Berget family said that no one knows exactly when and why the rule of holding hands while traveling through the forest of the four elements arose. But this rule must be strictly followed. Otherwise, problems may arise. It is said that in this way many accidents can be avoided, which are quite possible in this mysterious place. Some heads of great families have paid dearly for their sluggishness and forgetfulness when traveling here. The main character learned from her companion that if one of them dies during a journey through the forest of the four elements, the other will not be able to get out of here, remaining here forever. Axion Berget said that if 3 travelers entered the four elements forest, 2 would be able to leave if the third died. This rule was once often used by rival families to eliminate their opponents. The companion of the main character added that all these are fascinating theories that are not always confirmed, but now it does not matter. It is necessary to hold hands and continue the path. A few minutes later, Axion Berget stopped and told the heroine that they had arrived at their destination. The travelers were greeted by a view of the magical forest of the four elements. The main character looks at this legendary place with delight and surprise, which she has heard so much about before. The girl hopes that here she will be able to find what she is looking for. She came here to find a way to die and stop her reincarnations. Hillis Inoaden remembered her 7th incarnation. Mago Kikia told her about the magical forest of the 4 seasons, where any wish could be fulfilled. The main character asked to tell her more about this legendary place. The wonderful boy agreed to help his interlocutor and told her everything he knew about it. Mago Kikia said that the Forest of the 4 Seasons contains precious manuscripts that record the history of the 4 great families. There is a secret place there that contains some kind of forbidden literature. The wonderful boy added that he could not go to the 4 Seasons forest because he was not allowed to leave his estate. But Hillis Inoaden could go there and learn many interesting and useful things there. Mago Kikia smiled sweetly at his interlocutor and said that in the Forest of the 4 Elements, you never know for sure what you might find at the end of your journey. It is very exciting and stirs the blood. The main character thanked the wonderful boy for the useful information and said that she would think about his words. Hillis Inoaden saw in this story an opportunity to find what she really needed and stop her endless suffering. But that time, the girl failed. She was not the head of her clan. Mago Kikia died suddenly, and after some time, Hillis Inoaden died too. The travelers reached a beautiful green meadow, and Axion Berget said that they had finally reached the Forest of 4 Seasons. The main character let go of her companion's hands and said that she was grateful to him for taking her to this legendary place. It was a good deed on his part, which the girl sincerely appreciates. Axion Berget looked at his companion with a mysterious expression and asked her an important question. He asked Hillis Inoaden if she had come here for the ancient manuscripts that contained the history of the great families of the kingdom. The girl answered the aristocrat affirmatively. Then the head of the Berget family told his companion to follow him. He would show her where the ancient manuscripts she was looking for were. The travelers headed up the high ladder to find ancient manuscripts. At this time, the main character thought that the Forest of the 4 Elements was very beautiful. Just before entering the sacred temple where the manuscripts are kept, Hillis Inoaden noticed something unusual and strange. She leaned over to get a better look. The surprised girl saw ancient inscriptions that were written on the stone floor of the sacred temple. The main character read these words, which say that a person who entered the king's temple must prove his chosenness. Next to the mysterious inscriptions, Hillis Inoaden saw a stone sarcophagus. Axion Berget noticed his companion's surprise and said that according to legend, the remains of a king rest in this sarcophagus. The aristocrat added that the king's spirit appears to the person who can prove that he is the chosen one. But this is just an ancient legend. No one knows if it is true. Axion Berget continued on his way and told the female lead to follow him. They were almost at the place where the manuscripts that recorded the history of the great families were kept. A few minutes later, the travelers stopped at a large, massive door. behind which was a repository of ancient manuscripts. The head of the Berger family did not hesitate and immediately opened the door that leads to the manuscript storage. It was easy and effortless for him, although the door weighs a lot. Hillis Inoaden noted that it was quite spacious. Axian Berger agreed with his companion and said that there were 5 separate rooms where important papers were kept. The main character noticed that the 4 doors had the symbols of the great families of the kingdom painted on them. But the 5th door had nothing painted on it. This aroused genuine interest in the girl. Axion Berger said that the documents of each great family are kept behind a door with the corresponding coat of arms. This circumstance makes it much easier to find the necessary manuscripts. A certain vault can only be entered with official permission from the head of the relevant clan. Without it, access to the documents will be denied. Hillis Inoaden nodded her head in understanding of what her guide had told her. The head of the Berger family added that the room in the middle is accessible to all visitors. It contains open information about the king and the great families of the state. There is also a place to rest. Hillis Inoaden listens attentively to her guide. She noticed that Axion Berger explains and shows her everything perfectly, without asking for anything in return for his help. The girl believes that this aristocrat is cold only on the outside and very caring on the inside. The main character remembered her past incarnations. The head of the Berger house always showed concern for children and animals, as well as for his friends. Now the girl understands why he cares about her. Perhaps the Autumn Lord considers her his friend. Suddenly, Lady Hillis stopped, looked hard at her guide, and told him that he was a very kind man. Axion Berger was dumbfounded. The noble aristocrat was simply fulfilling his promise. He had not expected that Hillis Inoaden would value his help so highly. The main character's guide was a little embarrassed after hearing the compliment and asked the girl if she really thought so well of him. After that, the noble aristocrat turned away from his companion to hide his embarrassment. Axion Berger had never been in such a situation before. Therefore, he did not know how to act. After a few moments, the girl's guide collected his thoughts and overcame his embarrassment. He said that he had long wanted to read several important documents, so he would take advantage of the opportunity and not interfere with the search for Hillis Inoaden. The young aristocrat went off to do his business, and the main character stopped in front of the treasured door, on which the coat of arms of her great family was depicted. Hillis Inoaden entered the room where thousands of manuscripts were kept. Their huge number amazed the girl. Only now did she understand why this place was called the Forest of the 4 Elements. The main character understands that she urgently needs to start studying the manuscripts, but she is a little confused and does not know where to begin this work. The girl went to one of the shelves with books and took from there one volume, on which it was written that it contained all the events of the 71st year after the death of the king. Hillis Inoaden opened the book and began to read it carefully. It was written that on the first day of the 71st year, a ritual sacrifice was made before the sacred temple of the king. The youngest heart of a member of the Farvanon family was chosen for this year's sacred rite. The body and spirit of the victim were carefully purified and laid upon the altar of the king. But for some reason, he did not respond to his subjects. The main character read this and was horrified. She realized that in ancient times, human sacrifices were used to please the spirit of the great king. Hillis Inoaden continues her search and picks up another book. She tries to make out what is written, but she can hardly do anything. After looking through several pages, the main character loudly slammed the useless book shut and realized that she needed to change her tactics. Otherwise, she would spend an eternity in this storage. The girl decided to continue her search. She took another volume to understand in which direction to move further. Perhaps this will give a positive result. In her search, the main character relies only on her intuition, but so far she has not been able to find anything suitable. Hillis Inoaden did not even hope that she would be able to quickly find the information she needed. The girl spent several long and tiring hours in the book depository. She was tired and decided to continue her search another time. Lady Helils left the room and noticed that the Spring Lord had not returned yet. While Axion Berger is not here, the main character decided to check if she could enter the Kikia family's storage without the permission of the head of the family. Hillis Inoaden tried to open the door to the Kikia family library, but she was met with failure. The passage was closed with some unknown protective magic. Uninvited guests are definitely not welcome here. But the main character decided not to retreat in the face of difficulties. She used the sacred power of spring to open the enchanted door. The girl is very interested in what will come of it. Hillis Inoaden continues to cast spells to break the protection of the treasured door. She wants to know how long the unknown protective magic will last under the influence of her sacred power of spring. Suddenly, the girl felt someone holding her hand from behind and trying to stop her from doing something rash. It was Axian Berger. He grabbed the main character's hand and told her that she must stop her witchcraft immediately. The head of the Berger house got his way, and the girl stopped fighting the protective magic of the Kikia family. The main character's guide said that it was better not to do this, otherwise you could get very hurt. Hillis Inoaden looks at her companion and cannot understand why he is so excited now. It seems to her that she has almost managed to unlock the treasured door to the Kikia family vault. The main character is not angry with her guide for slightly pressing and injuring her delicate hand. She looks mysteriously at the young aristocrat and asks if he tried to do something similar when he was younger and inexperienced. Axian Berger replied that in his youth he had tried to break the defense of another great clan, and it had ended with his arm being severely and permanently damaged. Therefore, he should not do such things again, so as not to harm himself. Hillis Inoaden was interested in this intriguing story. The girl thought for a moment and asked her companion who had been his first guide in the Forest of the Four Elements. The Autumn Lord paused for a moment and replied that his first guide in the Forest of the Four Elements was the previous head of the Inoaden family. He was the father of the main character, Diego. The girl was very surprised when she heard these words. She did not expect that the noble Autumn Lord would be led to the Four Elements forest by such a pitiful person like her Diego Inoaden. Axion Berget apologized once more for his rudeness when he stopped his ward from acting rashly. At that moment, something strange happened to the young aristocrat. It was as if something unknown and unseen before was revealed to him when he looked at Hillis Inoaden. The young man's heart beat faster, and he felt an indescribable feeling of tenderness towards this girl who was now standing in front of him and smiling sweetly. Axion Berger did not understand what was really happening to him now. Perhaps the Autumn Lord's cold heart would finally be warmed by the spring sun of love. Hillis Inoaden felt tired and told her guide that she wanted to return home and continue her search another time. Axion Berger listened carefully to his companion and told her to follow him. The main character turned around to look again at the tablets that were carved into the stone floor next to the crypt of the Great King. For some reason, these writings did not give the girl peace. Hillis Inoaden felt that she felt her abilities more strongly in this place. Perhaps all this was happening for some reason that the girl did not yet understand. Axion Berget lost sight of his companion for a moment and suddenly heard a strange sound behind him. The young aristocrat's heart trembled. Something was wrong here. The young man turned to see what was happening to Hillis Inoaden behind him and froze in amazement. His companion was standing near the grave of the Great King and performing magic, showing her sacred power of spring. The girl threw a lock of her hair onto the mysterious tablet, expecting some effect from this action. She thinks that a piece of her body will affect the abilities of the magic tablet. The main character continues to cast spells and use her divine abilities. So far, Hillis Inoaden has not yet felt the increase in her energy. But perhaps she should wait a little. The girl has a new idea. She believes that she has not offered the Great King enough of a sacrifice. Hillis Inoaden is determined to see it through. She pricks her finger with a sharp pink thorn and offers a few drops of her thick blood. Drops of blood fell on the sacrificed hair and, in the opinion of the main character, made the sacrifice sufficient in full. Now the Great King will be pleased with his gift. Axion Berget quickly ran up to Hillis Inoaden and grabbed her hand, which she had pierced with a rose thorn. The young nobleman tries to stop his companion because she does not know what she is doing and does not think at all about the possible consequences of these actions. The young man got angry at Lady Hillis and sternly asked her why she was doing this. Was the girl really not worried at all about her future life, which could end right now? The main character looked at her guide with an innocent look and said that she just wanted to check her assumptions that she had when she read the inscription on the stone floor. Axion Berget was very surprised when he heard these words and said that the girl does not have to test all her theoretical guesses on herself. For this, you can pay not only with your health, but also with your life. The main character told her guide that he had squeezed her hand too tightly and asked her to let go so that the aristocrat would not get dirty with the girl's blood. This sobered up the head of the Berget's house a little. The young man saw that the wound on Hillis Inoaden's hand was not dangerous, and he sighed with relief. He let go of the girl's hand and told her that she had nothing more to worry about. The wound would heal very quickly if left alone. After that, Axian Burgett took off his tie to give his ward first aid. The young aristocrat believes that the wound should be bandaged so that it will heal faster. The young man apologized to Lady Hillis for the slight pain he was about to cause her. Then he took his tie and tightly bandaged the scratch on the heroine's palm. The girl appreciated this noble act. Axian Burgett said that he didn't have a handkerchief at the moment, so he had to use his own tie to give his charge first aid. The young man hoped that the noble aristocrat would be understanding about this. The main character thanked her guide for his help and said that he should not have been so concerned about her small scratch, which would heal very soon. But the young aristocrat said that he was used to helping others. Hillis Inoaden looked at her benefactor and thanked him once again for the help he had given her today. This gratitude was not only for the healing of her wound, but also for his services as a guide through the Forest of the Four Seasons. After that, the main character suddenly turned back and told her companion that it was time for them to return home. They had wasted too much time and energy on this journey. When the travelers returned to the royal castle, it was already evening. In the Forest of the Four Seasons, time felt completely different. Hillis Inoaden noticed this. Suddenly, Axian Burgett thought for a moment and decided to ask his companion one thing that had been bothering him for a long time. He asked if he and Hillis Inoaden had met in the royal castle before. The young man thought for a moment and said that he did not want to seem crazy, but he had a feeling that he had already met Lady Hillis in this same place and under the same circumstances. These words greatly surprised the main character. The girl does not understand how Axian Burgett can know that they met in the previous incarnations of the main character. Hillis Inoaden was so surprised that she even hurt herself by tightly squeezing her injured hand. She told the young man that he was mistaken, but a strange feeling does not leave Hillis Inoaden. The girl cannot comprehend the full depth of this feeling and where all this will lead her. Perhaps she does not yet know life as well as she would like. Axian Burgett said that he still has some doubts and confusion about these thoughts that have been bothering him lately. The main character apologized to her guide for keeping him late today. The girl asked Lord Axian to inform her when he would be free from other duties and could accompany her to the mysterious Forest of the Four Elements again. After that, Hillis Inoaden used her magic power, and she was instantly carried home by a magical whirlwind, which she had already learned to use decently and get to the designated places, and not to the wrong locations. As happened, for example, with the girl's recent visit to the clothing store. The head of the House of Burgett is left alone in the royal palace. He stands and looks at the pink whirlwind that was left behind after the disappearance of the main character. The young man thinks about his strange dreams and the intuitive insights that haunt him. Something tells the young lord that Hillis Inoaden has lied to him, and that they have met in this place before. But the young man cannot understand when and under what circumstances this happened. The main character returned to her estate. She thinks about Axian Burgett's words. The girl thinks that she needs to check the intuitive memories of the young lord. Maybe he knows something dangerous for her. Hillis Inoaden's maid, May, entered her room and saw that her mistress was injured and bleeding from her wound. The maid immediately scolded her charge for not taking care of her wound. The girl was so deep in thought about her problems that she didn't notice the blood on her hand that began to ooze through the bandage made by the Autumn Lord. The protagonist quickly calmed her maid down and said that it was just a light scratch. The maid told her mistress that she would call the doctor right away, but the girl stopped her and said that there was no need for that. It was just necessary to change the bandage. Maid May ran for the first aid kit and bandages. The main character thought again about what happened to her today in the mysterious Forest of the Four Elements, but the girl's wounded arm suddenly began to hurt. The bandage was soaked with blood, which dripped onto the floor. This caused the main character to have new memories from past incarnations. During the girl's third reincarnation, Diego Inoaden desperately tried to find a way to pass on her magical powers to his son Ricardo. One day, the main character's father brought her a whole box of red pills that she had to take every day. According to Diego Inoaden, these medicines were supposed to help his daughter pass on the sacred power of spring to her brother Ricardo. Whether this remedy is actually effective, no one knows to this day. Lady Hillis looked at the contents of the box with apprehension and felt that all this self-medication would not end well for her. Perhaps the girl would only be able to poison herself with these drugs. The main character promised her father that she would follow all his instructions exactly and take her medication every day before meals. Hillis Inoaden kept her word and did not miss a single dose of the pills. At first, the medicine worked quite effectively. It gradually reduced the sacred power of spring in the main character's body. The girl felt it clearly, but over time, Hillis Inoaden began to feel very ill. The side effects of the pills increased with each new intake. This scared the girl, but she continued to take the medication for the sake of her father and brother. One day, Lady Hillis realized that her magical power had almost disappeared along with her health. The girl felt simply disgusting. She was panicking and did not know what to do in this situation. The main character was bedridden due to weakness and constant illness. Diego Inoaden came to visit his daughter and asked her why her sacred power of spring was so persistent and untreatable. Lady Hillis's hysterical father began to shout at her and take out his anger on her, which arose from his inability to change anything in the current situation. The main character listens attentively to Diego Inoadena, who constantly repeats that the medicine should soon take effect and Ricardo will finally gain power over the sacred power of spring. Diego Inoaden finished his long and pointless speech. Then he took a handful of pills from the jar and said that he could not wait any longer for his daughter to give her gift to her brother. The crazy father sat down next to his exhausted daughter and told her that she had to swallow all the pills in one sitting. He would see to it right away. The main character doesn't want to do it, but she has no other choice. Hillis Inoaden has lost all her strength and can no longer resist the mad tyranny of her hysterical father. Under pressure and supervision of Diego Inoaden, the girl ate all the medicine at once, and the next day quietly breathed her last in her bed, all alone. Thus ended the third incarnation of Lady Hillis.